can't hear anything.
What it is. Okay, sorry. Yes, can you hear us now? Can you?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
All right, Bob, you're up. Thank you so much for being here tonight and for coming online. You're going to provide testimony at our public hearing on the FY26 budget and tax rate. You're on.
That's good. Okay. I've got some concerns. Because, you raise the water rates, the tax rates are going up, and it appears that the state and the county are both broke. And you're probably not going to get the monies you may be expecting. So my concern is, why are we giving grant money away when it could be better used by the people in town?
Bob, thank you for that. What
As
other?
far as reducing taxes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Fair enough.
I've been observing the people coming forward looking for grant money, and it seems like several of those groups have parochial interest. And it's really not a benefit to the town. That's my concern. When people come to testify, they come with a massive group. And it appears that a lot of the people who would testify are not from Poolesville. So I can't see giving money to groups that are not Poolesville specific.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough, Bob.
And that's about all I've got to say on it. I think the board needs to pay more attention to these groups and not try to agree. They almost act like pressure groups.
What's that word? Okay, hey Bob. So listen.
And whatever's going on, I got a bad connection, so I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, we can hear you just fine, and we appreciate the testimony, and I can promise you, Bob, that we will review all of the grants and the grant scenarios at least one more time before we vote on the tax rate. Fair enough? Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, and we appreciate your testimony on that too. Guys, thanks for hooking them up here. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. And commissioners, you heard it, and I think that's something that we also need to double check as we move forward here.
Okay.
Thank you. Next up for our testimony, already sitting at the table, Tom Kettler. And Tom, give us your name and address if you don't mind.
Yeah, again, it's Tom Kettler, 17917 Elgin Road, Poolesville, Maryland. Here tonight with a grant request. I apologize. This request actually was meant to put in about a month and a half ago, and due to a clerical oversight, never got to the town. So I worked with Miles and Wade and put together a revised, reduced proposal, and I believe you all have a hard copy of it. It's April 16th, dated April 16, 2025. The gist of the grant request is, I know in the past, the chamber and the town has been very supportive of chamber activity, and we really view ourselves as working in concert with the town to promote the businesses in town and thereby promote the community in town and welcome new residents, et cetera. So the grant request we have before you tonight is part of this budget, and I figure I'd come this time of year versus, in the past I've come sort of intermittently during the year. I just figured it'd be better to be upfront about it. The total grant request is not to exceed $3,500, and that's comprised of two parts. One is $750 for some additional welcome bags. As you all may recall, pre-COVID, the town passed out welcome bags to new residents in town. And then with the COVID, that program was stopped. And when I became president of the chamber, I thought it was important to continue the program. The town was not interested at that point in carrying on with it, so the chamber kind of took up the mantle. But with that, to help fund it, we requested and have in the past received funding from the town to purchase welcome bags. We'll be working through our supply next year, and I know this budget cycle doesn't start till July 1st, and we give those welcome bags out with the directory, the map, information on the town, information on local businesses, and we get the list from Kathy Bupp, who gives us the list of folks that have moved into town because they get the water meters transferred into their names, so that way we're able to capture the information, and then we pass those out. And some months, it's 5 or 10, it just depends on how many people are moving in. So that's the part one request. Part two is basically picking up on repeating a grant request we had this past year to support inviting local politicians to our Chamber of Commerce annual dinner that we have in February. And we thought that went very well this year. And we're doing that in the form of a not to exceed $2,750, and that basically is offset the ticket price for council members and local, and in this past year we actually had Congresswoman April Delaney came and her staff, so we thought it was very successful this past year, and basically that grant is designed to offset the ticket price of people who show up at that dinner, and we think that's a good adjunct to what Fair Access is doing, and this is the first time we've done it this year, this past February meeting, and we felt very good about how it went. I think this past year the total allocation we asked for was $2,000. We only used $1,700 based on who attended. We've upped the amount just because we're not afraid, but we expect the ticket price to go up, and we also expect hopefully higher attendance because this year the county council, a lot of them were not able to attend the dinner because they had a budget hearing that night, so we'll try to work that schedule around theirs next year. But and this is also an election year, so you all know how election years run. People tend to show up, so we think this is a nice counterpoint to the breakfast that Fair Access does on Poolesville Day, and this hits in the middle of winter in February. So again, we appreciate the town's support, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about it. And again, I'll emphasize that if we don't sell that many tickets, we obviously won't ask. We'll give you a list of who attends, and that will match whatever we ask for. So it would not to exceed $3,500. So with that, I will entertain any questions or go back to my seat.
Anything from the commissioners on the presentation? Just want to say on behalf of the commissioners, thank you, Tom, for your hard work and your shepherding of the chamber. And
yeah, we're very excited, Jim. I appreciate that. We're back up to over 165 members, pretty much matching last year's, and that was what we had by the year end. So I fully expect we'll have over 175 members by At least that's my goal that I gave to my board last week at our meeting. So we're very excited about that. And, I took back the reins of the chamber a couple of years ago coming out of COVID. We had maybe 100, 110 members. So it's nice to, and I think it's one of those things that, like anything else, as it does better, more people see our, exposure, and we're working with the county at large. I will share, I went to a meeting last week with the multiple chambers from throughout Montgomery County, with the Montgomery County Chamber representing the Poolesville Chamber, and they're working on trying to combine all the chambers to get a little more active at the county level on things like property tax increases and things that really affect residents and businesses alike. So Bob, if he's still on, will like that. So we're trying to backstop, figuring the more the business community is represented at the countywide level. I think we haven't done a great job in the past. The business community in general has not. So we're really trying to work that in. So we don't, as I remind people, we don't take positions on political candidates, but we do, things like White's Ferry and things that we're all working very hard for. We certainly are trying to help with that whenever we can. So.
Very good. So I'm going to take it your testimony on the tax rate is that you're okay with it as long as the chamber's request is approved. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, I think it's a modest increase, and I understand there's a lot of pressures on the budget, and the county tax increase. There's a lot of talk about it. It's 3.7% at the property tax. So there's a lot of talk about that right now.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother.
That's a starting point. Hopefully it goes down to zero.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Tom. Any questions from the commissioners for Tom Kettler?
Thank you, Tom.
Appreciate it. All right, thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Thanks. Good job. Keep up the good work, brother. All right. Next signed up is Sanjeev Sharma. Good to see you, man. Thank you. Thanks for coming up. Give us your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Sanjeev Sharma, 17102 Cubit Court, Poolesville. And thank you for providing this opportunity today. So I saw that notice about the tax rate hike, and incidentally, I also got in January reassessment done, the 3-yearly reassessment done, and I was shocked at the time. It was like 30% jump from past reassessment. So my question to the commissioners is basically, I'm assuming I'm not the only one who is in this board, basically around 30% increase in the assessment value. So have you taken those into considerations when you basically calculated the budgets and still saw a need for increasing the tax rate as well? Because that the additional revenue coming from the reassessments, 30% increase on the reassessment would also be coming in. So on top of that, why did you need to reassess the tax rate? So that's my query.
So any of the commissioners, you're free to go at it, or I'm happy to give you at least my spin on it. And I really appreciate you coming up. It comes down to that, again, we have increased burdens here, and that's just doesn't go away. We have to pay a competitive rates to our workers. We were below competitive rates on where we've been paying people, and we've been surviving on the goodwill and the good management of our staff here. We've also got some scenarios that are going to cost the town some money as time moves on. Of course, we're dealing with PFAS in the water, and that's not just all assumed by what happens with our water rates. There's other costs that are associated with that. So in the end, we hear you loud and clear, but just so I'm looking at your house, it's cubic court. I'm going to guess it's probably around $900,000. The value of your house as your assessments go up, probably in the 600 now. So I'll guess 600,000 now, 30% up over time, $900,000. $900,000 is probably going to equal out to be something like a $10 a month tax increase for you. And I'm not shying away from the fact that $10 is $10, and over the course of a year, obviously that's $120. That's not small change. But we are going to try and offer as much value as we can for it. We're not etched in stone. We're still going to talk about it after this public hearing. But our goal is to keep the taxes as low as possible, offer all the services that we need to offer that our residents tell us they want, do it I'd have to say it a little bit on the cheap, just to make sure that that we're being responsible with our people's money, and also recognizing that the county and the state are trying to raise taxes. They're raising taxes potentially in response to what's going on at the federal level, and we may well. I forget who said in the beginning. We may well lose revenue thanks to what's going on. So I'm not saying we're hedging our bets, but we kept our tax increase, our rate increase, which again only went up. Our actual tax rate increase only went up like $10 a house, period. That's the minimum we thought we'd get away with to do what we want to do. In addition to, there's going to be future things that we're hopeful we'll be able to cut numbers from. And that would hopefully hold off future tax increases. And I'm not going to guarantee a tax decrease to anybody, but that's a possibility in the future too.
So basically, the crux of my question was: have you already taken those 30% increases in the revenue or whatever? After that, you calculated that it was still short of the budget, and I can understand that costs are rising, so you have to take all that into consideration. But have you already considered those reassessments as part of the overall equation?
Yeah, and remember, it's constant yield we're talking about, and it's not everybody's assessment comes in at the same time either. So we recognize that that is a burden that's being put on our residents by the county and the state, and really as a result, we're doing what we consider to be the absolute minimum in order to provide what I would consider to be a successful, thriving town that operates on the minimum for what we do. There's been talk about our grant programs, right? And grants are easy to target because, that's just not somebody's salary. That's not a service that's being performed. But I think one of the things that keeps Poolesville really special is that we work all the time to build community. And it's one of the reasons why you moved here. It's one of the, say, for instance, we have fair access. Why do we have fair access? Well, we need a new high school. Do you have a high school student?
Yes.
And please thank your high school student for living through the construction zone. But if you want a new high school, you almost have to have a fair access these days. If you have to have fair access, you have to fund fair access. So we're out there trying to thread the needle with minimum revenues coming in, a very competitive still, even with increased water rates, a competitive water rate structure. And our job is to thread that needle without, you don't see our town taking in millions of dollars of impact fees. You see us keeping our tax rate as low as possible while still making the town the way that we hope you guys want it to be. So, and your input is always valued because it's the people that tell us what they want, and that's what we try to deliver.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and we could talk more about this anytime, and I appreciate it. You guys, I hogged it all as usual. Go for it.
No, I
It's all
think
yours.
you've said everything that we need to say.
Okay, good. Well, you slid me a note, so I figured I'd know. No, she only kicks me when I go too long. So, anyway, but thank you for coming in, and please tell your neighbors we're always accessible. We're always willing to have conversation about this, and we are the guardians of your tax dollars here in Poolesville. You know us personally, and you have to know that we're really doing our best to try and watch out for you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's
thank
all
you.
from me.
Appreciate it. Yep, thank you. Thanks for coming in. All right, is there anybody else that was meant to sign up to talk about the budget? Yes, sir, come on in. I'm taking people that didn't sign up. Are we okay?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. Brian McNally, 19504 Lewis Orchard Lane in Poolesville. Speaking as a board of director for Hope Garden Children's Ballet Theater, who previously submitted a grant application for your consideration for the curtains for Wayland Commons for both our performances as well as new performances that would be coming to the stage. We come again to thank you all for your consideration, for your time to review our application in detail and consider it. We have taken your suggestions of a memorandum of understanding and have begun to work internally to look after exactly what that would be so that we can be the appropriate shepherds or stewards of essentially the curtains themselves so that they could be accessible to all members of Poolesville. as a dance community of essentially Poolesville residents, the vast majority of the dancers are that we have are from Poolesville and are Poolesville residents. We take that sort of stewardship very seriously. And so you can even see in our grant request that we have itemized it down to the penny. And so we, take, such, fiscal conservative nature to our grant application, and we appreciate your consideration. So, and I didn't know if there were any additional questions or points of clarification that I can add in our goal to bring arts to Western Montgomery County, specifically Poolesville, and that how it aligns with the strategic direction of the town of Poolesville and its desire to be an arts center in the future.
Anything, commissioners?
We appreciate you following up with that. I don't know if you've had a chance to circulate an initial draft of that memorandum, but once you do, we'd love to see it. And
yeah, the board's considering it, and what represents both the sensitivity to the request and how it would be accessible to all members of Poolesville, but at the same time, something that we can be responsible and actionable towards, so that there are indeed no misunderstandings around the terms of such a memorandum. And furthermore, we weren't going to use this forum to do it, but we were certainly going to seek your input as to the viability of, the terms that we outline for that for the long term, especially in the cases of events of damage. That is, obviously what would be the biggest issue, because that would be then putting the funds at risk.
Right.
So.
right.
Well, we appreciate that. And, as part of our consideration for the budget, we've taken some good consideration on actually how it would work with the curtains and your storage and putting them up and down. We'll have more discussions about that, but you've presented a very nice proposal for it. And the theater troupe is definitely a community builder, and we appreciate the work you guys do for that. So,
Thank you for the kind words.
all right. Anybody else? Nope. Anybody else out there that didn't sign up that wants to talk about taxes? Nobody else online?
Bobby tried to get back in.
Did he?
Would you?
I mean, if he feels like it, he already kind of used 3 minutes up on his previous, but I'm not opposed. I don't.
Submit written testimony.
Yeah, I don't want to shut him out. If you think you got him, give him one.
No, I can. He's still waiting in the waiting room.
That's fine. Then tell him to come on. Let's go. He's lived here for 50 years. He gets the right to have a All right, Bob, you're back. Did you want to talk some more?
Oh, yeah. I'm looking.
Can't hear him.
Yeah, can you come a little closer to your computer?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, I don't have anything more to add.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Again, thanks for your testimony previously. We appreciate you, and as always, giving us a good check. We appreciate that. All right. Thank you. Anybody else in the audience that wanted to sign up and didn't sign up for our public hearing on our tax rate? Nobody? Okay. We'll consider this public hearing closed. Thank you, everybody, for your contribution for it. We have commissioners' announcements and committee reports. Up next, Alan, if you don't mind, you can start with us.
No problem. All right, good old Parks Board. We had we had a meeting April 9th over at Stevens Park. We started actually a little earlier, 6 o'clock. Wanted to do a little bit of a site visit relative to the relocation of the dog park. That's going to be it from Dillingham to Stevens Park. Looked at a number of locations. I think we narrowed it down to closer over to the soccer fields, or the soccer field. There's a little pie-shaped kind of piece of property between the path and, it's kind of the access road or Fisher Avenue, what it is, leading to the water treatment plant. That would be an access point to it. But we're going to figure out with John, go ahead and get an idea of location, size, fencing options. We're going to probably do a couple possible gravel parking spots so people can just drive down instead of walking from Stevens Park down that long pathway. But it was a very productive meeting. It's been a while since I've been over at Stevens Park in that kind of capacity, So it's nice to know everything. And we also had, talking about even a long run for some of the bigger dogs between the pathway and the fence line where the trees are, so. And then some of the bigger news is we had 2 board members that have been with the Parks Board for some time resign. I want to thank Patrick Trainer and Doug McKenney. Last month was their last meeting. We did have some more applications for candidates. We discussed going 2 positions. But again, I just wanted to understand where Pat and Doug have given hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of their time over the last couple of decades for creating much of the great park systems that we have now. A lot of work, a lot of dedication. As far as our good old parks, Preston and the crew are out taking care of the good old spring cleanups and mowing and pretty consistent with everything. I know one of the items that Preston had mentioned is try to figure out where we can get maybe another location for a field because of the use on it, practice-wise, able to grow, and just kind of rotate it so it gets a little bit of a breather. But again, that's just it's a vision. We just have to go into, it was just brought up to us, so we will discuss that more detail later. You guys may have seen some of the fire hydrants started to get flushed throughout the next couple weeks. And we should be wrapped up, what is it, probably next week?
This Friday.
Yep.
Okay, so needed to do that. Let's see, another thing is having some parking issues, bottlenecking parking issues at Wooten and Fisher by the townhouses. Getting a little bit of, conflicting, so go ahead.
And that's where we added the signs that, from the traffic owner. So we're still watching some of that. There's a couple of people. We also talked about things on Hughes, where there's some stacking there. So we're going to look at reaching out to people who park either overnight. There's a commercial vehicle that was parked overnight and such to try to.
And I met Hughes
Yeah.
and Wooten, not
Yeah.
Wooten and Fisher. But
Yeah.
anyhow, we're just monitoring right now. There is people that park there during the day and overnight, and it's just cumbersome with emergency equipment and school buses and overall traffic. Again, Trails Working Group talked about it, how the commissioners voted on it to move forward. We got to prioritize which trails we want to start with. Obviously, as everything else, it's discuss our grants and funding options. But again, it's an ongoing progress where it's been going on since 1990, so we will continue to do our due diligence on that and work our way through all the specifics. I believe we had some installation, some sidewalks this week with West Willard that got done. We're going to be focused on some of Spates Hill area for repairs. We also determined if we can dedicate more of the sidewalks, repairs, fixes, on like the main thoroughfares, Wooten Avenue, Fisher, then obviously the secondary roads will be, down the line. But we have a fantastic schedule, Excel spreadsheet of all the sidewalks that have been consistently repaired, updated, and look ahead for years. I think I was going to a meeting a couple weeks ago, and I noticed I was following 2 cars that actually blew through the four-way intersection.
Which one?
Right out here, just a good old, right by.
Right, the normal one?
The normal one, yeah. So, not going fast, just steady, focused on making it through. But I had discussed maybe, I've seen some other towns that have the blinking stop signs, just to give them a little bit more of the optics of there is stop signs here, even though we have stop signs, yellow signs saying that there's stop signs ahead. It's more visual for people. So we discussed that, talked about maybe getting some kind of embedded reflectors on the sidewalk between Haller Avenue and in front of the church, just to get a little bit brighter coming out of Haller at night. As you know, Sarah, it gets pretty dark in that little area, even with that light, so.
There's no light on the left side.
Zero.
After the neighborhood.
And I know that's a state road, so I know
That
Niles
light
is,
that's there blinks off and on.
We did put a request in to have Potomac Edison hang another Cobra light there.
Yeah.
And we did put a speed sign
I was
up.
gonna say the speed
Yeah.
sign, I think has helped.
Yeah.
It has,
I
because
really
sometimes,
think it's
yeah,
helped, because it kind of like gives people an awareness
Mm-hmm.
that they're.
sometimes coming out of that neighborhood is risky.
Yeah.
So, but the monitoring of the speed,
Yeah, and so we're looking at that, and we'll pull data in a couple of weeks about what we see there too, just to get a good sample size of that, since we can pull that from that one.
we discussed a little bit of the possible pavilion at Wayland Commons, to get more of specifics of the purpose, cost, what events we're going to have, long-term solution, and is it necessary, is it not necessary? But, you know, again, it's a preliminary discussion. We obviously have our ferry crossing development over here that, you know, with the houses on this side, you know, is it going to be impeding the stage? There's a lot of things. The trees are growing, so it's going to be impeding the stage anyhow a little bit. But again, we're just going to have to figure out a little bit more details and design moving forward. And so that's it. And then next month's meeting's May 7th. So I will have the updates from tonight's meeting presented there.
And we'll be honoring both of those gents at our May meetings.
Right.
So thank you for bringing them up today. Great service, unbelievable committee members. Tough to replace, but I know you guys have already made recommendations.
We did.
We'll see how that goes.
Correct.
So thank you for that. Appreciate it. Any questions for Alan?
Thank you, Alan.
You're welcome.
Brian, you're up next.
All right, Planning Commission met last Wednesday, the 16th of April. We led off the meeting with some sad news. Unfortunately, Chuck Stump is resigning effective immediately due to his committed trail experiences. He'll be out hiking in areas that he can't get service to attend meetings online. Didn't feel it was right to miss. He thought he was going to miss something like 7 of the next 12 meetings, so. As happy as we are for him to go on his endeavors, we're very sad to miss him. Thanked him for his second term on the Planning Commission and really for his efforts. We joked that we might still be working on the master plan had Chuck not come back.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So sad to see him go. We discussed, there were some variances put up from the Willard property, ferry crossing right next door, where we kind of anticipated this in advance, where these lot configurations are small and the ones that have to be on, you know, fairly narrow or, you know, wide and not very deep, it was tough to fit the houses. They couldn't twist and fit the houses on them without actually impeding on some of the BRLs. Most of these were in the rear, not towards any other houses. There were a couple that were adjacent lots, but minimal impact, inches to a foot versus, you know, anything significant. We've reviewed them as there were a couple of pairs that might impact each other. We reviewed them together, and there's overall 7.
There's 6.
6, thank you, 6. A couple of those we've reviewed independently, and all were recommended to the BZA to accept. And then we had a preliminary discussion on water allocation. Wade presented, and we all just kind of said, well, let's wait and see what we hear on Monday, and hopefully later this evening we'll have a better understanding and have a better educated discussion on that on the next meeting in May. We provided a little bit more feedback on the Cultural Arts District parking ideas. So basically looking towards lowering or no required parking spaces for businesses that get started in that area, and see how it goes. At first, we felt like if we ran into an issue where we had to find parking for that area, that would be a great thing. So didn't want to burden anybody with having to put in parking spaces.
Have we communicated at all with the county about being able to use the county parking lot, especially during the times when the pool is closed?
Not the pool, but we've had preliminary discussions. I think Fair Access has recommended that we have a plan to ask the county for use of the high school parking lot, which would be very convenient for that area.
Yeah.
So we're looking into that.
All right,
Got it? Any other questions for Brian?
thank you.
Ed, if you would do us on Sustainable Poolesville and lead us off on fair access.
Sure. All right, Sustainable Poolesville, real simple. Today they had a Pick It Up Poolesville. They had about 20, 22 people who went out to Stevens Park area, a lot of kids out, a few adults. And so they had a successful time this morning. And then we have our Sustainable Poolesville meeting will come up this Wednesday. So nothing new since I last reported, but we'll have our meeting this Wednesday. Fair access, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah, and I'll chime in if needed.
All right. So we had our meeting 2 weeks ago. One of our goals is to make sure that we are better informed as the Fair Access Committee on what different organizations in the Agricultural Reserve are doing, and in particular, county committees. We want to make sure that residents from the western part of the county are represented on those county committees, because if you look at the breakdown of who is currently serving on those committees, that's very down county heavy, even for committees that represent the upper western Montgomery County. So as part of that sort of audit, we have been inviting representatives from those committees or commissions who live in the Ag Reserve or in Poolesville specifically to give us an update, and have just asked them to help keep us apprised of when there are openings so that we can facilitate other residents from the upper western county to apply for those positions. So we had a presentation from Abby Radigan on the Libraries Commission. We also had a presentation from Linda Bergovsky on the Aging Commission. And we, let's see, I think Link presented at UCAB, which is the Up County, why do I always blank on this name? Advisory Board. Thank you. So we'll continue to kind of move through each of those commissions and continue that auditing process. We are also continuing our advocacy related to both the operating and capital budgets. We had residents testify in the last couple weeks for WUMCO, Poolesville Seniors. We also are inviting residents to join us on May 1st at Black Rock Center, where there's a budget listening session with the county executive. Currently, it doesn't look like funding for the pool bubble is going to make it into this year's capital or operating budget. It is the end of sort of a 3-year cycle for the county budgeting process. So while we're disappointed, we also get that they're kind of finishing up things that have already been part of the budget. So we're much more optimistic that next year we will be able to get into that budget process and be part of that next 3 to 5 year push. We did successfully secure so far continued funding for WUMCO for the mobile health van and some of the additional services that WUMCO has been able to provide. So that is a win. And we are continuing to work with the Recreation Department on plans for the high school playing fields, getting that plan for that in the future. We've also been working on a video that we're going to be sharing with all the county council members and on social media that highlights some of our budgeting requests. And we've begun planning for the Poolesville Day Breakfast.
Great.
Any questions?
Lot, yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Sarah. That's great. So I'll tag in on my report with just a couple of things that Sarah's referred to, since we're all involved in fair access in some format or another, and appreciate all the hard work of all of our committees, parks, planning. You guys have your hands full coming up next. You guys have always had your hands full. Appreciate everybody's contribution on this side. Recently had an interview with the Washington Post. They're going to do an article on Poolesville and what a great community we have. So several members of the community they've reached out to. They asked me for a whole mix, and they actually didn't want any more elected officials, so sorry about that, guys.
That is okay.
But, I know, sorry about that. But they wanted new residents, old residents, mix of residents, people that just got here, et cetera. So gave them a whole list, and they're in the process of the interviewing and different people right now. So I think it's awesome, and I'm sure they're going to do a great job on us. Tomorrow, Link and I are going to be going.
Related to
Yep.
White's Ferry, or just independent of that?
No, independent. Isn't it nice to talk about something besides White's Ferry? But I will talk about it.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah. So Link and I, looks like we're going to be going to Annapolis tomorrow when the governor signs the legislation that authorizes the Ag Reserve study to look at the future of the Ag Reserve in terms of commerce and the success of it overall. What will it take to keep the Ag Reserve as wonderful as it is? So tomorrow we'll be there for that bill signing. Again, Sarah mentioned the BlackRock May 1st listening session. Hopefully we'll all get a chance to go for that. We're going to be advocating for all the things that we've been advocating for that you guys know about already. Pool bubble, continued funding for the community center, and I'm sure we'll have other things that are going to be popping up before you know it. Speaking of, and Link wrote, let's show the flag, like by showing up to these listening sessions. So I kicked this over to our guys today, and this will be a surprise to the commissioners, so be ready. I kicked over that there is a town flag design group, and I'm just going to attend it. And I asked our guys if they wanted to attend. Miles, you
I registered for it as well.
small straw. You got the short straw. So anyway, we're going to.
Sponsored by who, or?
It's a National League of Cities.
Oh, okay.
So, and not saying that we want to redesign the flag, but just saying we're going to go look at it and see what they have to say about it. So it's right here,
I'm open
everybody.
to it. Maybe hold it open for everyone to see. Yeah, I'm all for designing it.
Oh, already we've got input from people.
We just want to see the
I
draft
just think
first.
people have no idea what that is from far away,
Yeah.
you know?
So anyway, just putting it out there to the people. We certainly will go super transparent and talk to everybody and probably do surveys and all kinds of fun stuff to get people's input on it. So anyway, there you go, guys. You're welcome to attend as well, and I'll send the link around. And if you guys want to be a part of it, you can. Or let's do the initial work on it. White's Ferry, what a big week for that, right? It was a release last Friday and talk about the $3 million bounty that is paid to the two participants, the owners of the properties and the boat, to see if they can work a deal out. Of course, Mr. Kuhn went right to Virginia supposedly to ask them if they wanted to take over stewardship of just the boat and the machinery surrounding the ferry, not necessarily the land, of course, which everybody needs to have the land. So, hey, let's see what happens. I love the position that the county took with this and the state. I give a lot of credit to Mark Elrich and also David Fraser-Dago for pushing this solution to take place. If they don't take advantage of it, fine. The money comes back into the state and the county's coffers, and then we move on from there. And they've got a deadline to get it done. Let's see what happens. If anybody wants to talk about that offline, by the way, I held an open house this weekend, and I never talked about the house once. It was it was all about White's Ferry, and that's fine. So, I also had a resident that has hit us up about the blasting that's taking place next door. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard from people or not. I'm sure you've heard the blasting. And we just keep all of our residents. So if you're listening to this, you can reach out to town staff. They'll give you the best schedule that we have. John's like, they're going to just keep blasting. But John, you guys could put the word out, meet with our residents. I'm just directing them to you, and I know you're going to take good care of our people. And it's not going to go on forever, but it's something that is going to go on. I want to say again, as I say every month, thanks to John Woltz for his work on the Canal Town Trust. We've never been more integrated with Canal Towns as we are right now, and we have good things going on with those guys. We're able to lend them some leadership that they kind of are looking for, and just my hats off to the work they're doing in this growing group that's really doing some special work right now. So thanks again to John Woltz for that too. And you were Sarah, you were right on. Some things getting money from the county and some things not. But I do think it's important to call out that our state delegation delivered $200,000. Well, $200,000 for the pool and $250,000 for Riverworks. So Riverworks, which is going to be the anchor of our cultural arts district, has just about completed all the funding that they need, which is awesome. And we're so proud and so happy for the work those guys have done to raise money and to get where they need to go. And again, $200,000 for the pool bubble, that's not small change either. And if it works out right, the county will look at the money that we've saved and the money that the county, the state has put together. There's probably another tranche of funding coming for the pool bubble next year from the state. In a really, really challenging budget year, to have $450,000 amongst other monies devoted to Poolesville and the betterment of our community. Very thankful for the hard work of our guys that are out there busting chops, trying to bring the money back to our region. So that's all I have. Any questions? You can ask about White's Ferry right now if you want. Okay, we'll save it for later. That's fine. All right, any other public comments? So we're going to have a presentation on water capacity and water discussions, and there will be a chance for some Q&A afterwards. If you wanted to say something ahead of time, you could do it now. If not, we'll go ahead and let the participants get started, and we'll go from there. Anybody preliminary questions?
We'll do minutes or no?
You always catch the one thing that I don't move forward with. Where is it on here? Uh-oh. Yeah, sorry, it's not on my list, and I need to do it. No, thank you. So there's no public comment. We will hold off until we get into the after of the water capacity reports. There'll be a discussion that will be delivered. Approval of the minutes, April 7th, 2025. Do we have a motion?
A motion that we approve the minutes from the April 7th meeting.
Second.
Motion made by Ed, second by Sarah. Any other questions, changes, abridgments? No? All in favor of approval of the minutes of April 7th, 2025, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? The minutes are approved. Okay, it's fun to call this new business, but I don't really look at it as new business. It's always our business, is to make sure that we're delivering water the right way. Tonight, so we have an esteemed hydrologist, Pat Hammond, is here to give us a presentation. Caroline Taylor is also here from Montgomery Countryside Alliance. You guys are welcome to come up to the table, introduce yourselves, and do your presentation. After they are completed, then we're going to have Kathy Mim, another noted hydrologist with our hydrologist, SS Papadopoulos. She'll be doing a presentation as well. When Kathy's presentation is done, we'll be open for questions. Okay, gang.
Are we still on YouTube as well?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
All right, great. For the record, I'm Caroline Taylor, Executive Director for Montgomery Countryside Alliance, and very pleased to be here this evening. Noting the time, I will spend just a minute or two going sort of round the world on the background of Pat Hammond, but to also preface to say that Montgomery Countryside Alliance, looking at climate change, looking at sort of the national trajectory on groundwater availability and the diminishment of groundwater sort of across the country, and also learning of Pat Hammond's report for Maryland MDE entitled "The Effect of Climate Change on Maryland's Water Supply." We applied for grant funding from the Chesapeake Bay Trust in order to fund the study. We received the funds, and the study was completed, and I suspect many of you have seen some of it. It's eye-crossing in terms of its detail for those of us that are laypersons, but that's part of the reason why Pat is here this evening. And if you'll give me grace for a minute to just give you a little bit of his background, Pat has a BS in oceanography and MS in geology. He served in the Navy as a submarine officer. He's worked for Chevron and Gulf Oil in terms of exploration for petroleum. And for 30 years, he worked for Maryland's Water Supply Program, MDE, and MD and Maryland DNR. He developed, he's going to coach me from the side here. He developed test and evaluation procedures for the water appropriations and use permits for groundwater withdrawals in fractured rock aquifers, evaluated permits for Poolesville's wells 7 through 10, 12, and 13. He completed the 1999 evaluation of Poolesville's public water supply system that increased reliable yield of more than 200,000 gallons per day. 7 peer-reviewed publications include a study of the reliable drought yields of public water supplies in fractured rock aquifers of Maryland, with discussions of Poolesville wells 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7. Also, he says here, unrelated but interesting are studies on methane migration impacts from leaky gas shale wells. He completed a comprehensive multi-year hydrogeological study of the fractured rock aquifers of central and western Maryland and conducted for MDE water supply program. Included extensive study of reliable drought yields of Poolesville's public water supply wells, the interference impacts of withdrawals from those wells, the impacts those water withdrawals had on stream flow, fisheries, communities, and aquatic habitat. Also included was a study on the effects of climate change, as I just mentioned, on Maryland's water supply. And with all of those words, I'm going to turn it over to Pat.
And we're out of time.
Yeah, well.
I'm just kidding, Pat. You have as much time as you want.
Yeah, well, it's 15 minutes. So it won't be forever.
Thank you.
I appreciate you giving me time to present the
Yes, sir.
results of my study.
Thank you.
First, I'm going to give a brief history of Poolesville's water supply system. Prior to 1969, residents were supplied by individual wells and springs. Due to contamination by on-site septic systems, the state directed the town to develop a central public water supply in 1970. By 1978, water use was 246,000 gallons per day, and the yields of wells 1 through 4 had declined, which was linked to well interference. Well 5 was completed in 1980, well 6 in 1985. Permitted water use was increased from 260,000 gallons a day to 580,000 gallons a day in 1986 to meet unspecified growth in the town. The increased amount of the permit of equal to 222 gallons per day average was apparently based on the tested yield of well 6, which was 225 gallons per minute. By 1996, the yield of well 6 had declined to 80 gallons per minute. In 1999, the town manager indicated that mandatory water restrictions were required during that drought, as well as non-drought years of 1993 and 1995, and voluntary restrictions during a number of other years. Next slide. Got to get mine going. In 1999, I met with the town and made suggestions that increase the total yield of the system by more than 200,000 gallons per day, mainly by increasing the yield of well 2 from 20 to 100 gallons per minute and increasing the pumping periods of the individual wells from 16 to 20 hours per day. And these changes were actually implemented by Wade. And it's one of our big success stories in Poolesville. Subsequent data suggested that the yields of wells 6 and 7 were overestimated and damaged by excessive dewatering of upper reservoir units, substantially reducing their yields. The town indicated that they only needed 480,000 gallons a day to meet existing water demand. Normally, this would result in reduced appropriation, but due to the increased system yield, the permit was nominally reduced to only 550,000 gallons a day to meet existing demand and, again, unspecified town growth. With the additions of wells 9 through 14, the total of the town's water use permit appropriations was increased to the present 650,000 gallons per day. The first potential interference impacts to private wells due to Poolesville's municipal withdrawals occurred in 1973, when 10 to 15 private wells were impacted after the completion of the third town well. The state directed the town to replace those wells. Multi-well tests of wells 4 and 5, which included monitoring of private wells this time, were conducted indicating impacts to nearby wells may occur. So those homeowners were given the option of being hooked up to the public system. Multi-well tests of wells 6, 7, and 8 were conducted, but there's no known record that use from those wells impacted private wells. In 1999, a multi-well test was conducted on a proposed municipal well at Bachelor's Purchase property, which is at the bottom of, I don't have a pointer, but it's, you probably can't read it, but it's well G on that chart, on that graph. Drawdowns in 9 observation wells along Hughes Road, which is at the very south end of the picture, varied from 2 to 12 feet, and a 10th well went dry with 23 feet of drawdown, which was closer to the Bachelor Purchase well. The town abandoned the project due to the low yield of the well and the potential impacts to nearby house wells. Multi-well after tests are performed on Poolesville's wells 9 and 10 under average climatic conditions. 6 domestic wells within a 1/4 mile of wells 9 and 10 were replaced by the town, and public water was supplied to a nursery, which is the men's nursery. They reminded me of that. Monthly water level monitoring, as shown in this graph, was required for 4 domestic wells and an inactive Bachelor Purchase well to see if impacts would occur in the Sugarland Forest community, about 1 mile south of town wells 9 and 10. In August of 2007, MDE received complaints of 5 house wells in the Sugarland Forest community having problems associated with low water pressure, turbidity, or dry wells. These impacts are actually shown at the very end of this graph, where you can see large drawdowns. MDE investigated that the impacts were due to withdrawals from wells 9 and 10 and the nearby Poolesville Golf Course irrigation well. The town and golf course paid for deep wells to replace the relatively shallow Sugarland Forest wells, which included one of her wells. And after multi-well after tests of wells 12 and 13, MDE identified properties requiring immediate replacement wells and those requiring long-term monitoring and possible well replacements. Next. In 1999, the water balance for the Horsepen Branch watershed, which is shown pretty much in the middle of that figure, they indicated the town had an over-allocation of 155,700 gallons per day under its permit of 293,000 gallons per day, although the recent use has only been 185,000 gallons per day.
When you say over allocation, as in MDE over allocated, like overestimated?
Well, they were already using the water within the watershed, and I'll get to that. Let me just finish this next paragraph, maybe it'll help. Okay. MDE notified the town in May 1999 that it was allowed to overappropriate water in the watershed to meet existing demand. So you were already using the water to supply. It's a public health and safety issue. But it was as long as it caused no unreasonable impacts. Horsepen Branch Site A, it's sort of in the middle of the figure, is the most upstream MBSS site in the watershed. It's Maryland Biological Stream Survey site. Do you have a pointer?
He's using.
Well.
Anybody have a pointer pen? I'm kidding.
Anyway, it's right there. Right there. That's side A. You just hit side A.
Okay, we'll just follow your mouse.
Yep, just
Okay,
where my
that's-
cursor is, right there.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, side A. It is severely impaired. It has a BIBI, a score of 1.5, which is for benthic invertebrates, and a FIBI score of 1, which is for fish communities. Scores at or above 3 are considered unimpaired. So it is severely impaired. Flows appear to have been reduced by more than 50% due to Poolesville's withdrawals on the sample date in 2008, which was a climatically above average year. Now, the stream can be restored by using excess water balance capacity and additional wells in the Dry Seneca Creek and Broad Run subdivisions. I've talked to Wade about this previously. That should be sufficient to supply existing demand and depending on well yields, future growth. Next slide. In order to demonstrate the effects of climate change on Poolesville's water supply, you have to start with how the water demand will change due to changing climatic conditions. The estimated average annual demand is 669,550 gallons per day. That's for the grow-out population of 6,500. This is based on the average reported use of, in 2018 to 2023, of 530,942 gallons per day average. An existing population at the time I did my study of 5,772, with an occupancy rate of 97%. To this is added 728 people at 100 gallons per day per capita, which is pretty standard for municipal supplies. Also added is 10% for drought, since droughts tend to be 10% higher than the average for the year, not for the peak demand.
Right.
Also, is 5,434 gallons per day was added for 30 days at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's basically to account for climate change. I got that from Kathy Mims' report. Maximum monthly demand is 1,003,484 gallons per day, based on a maximum to average ratio of 1.5 to 1. Summertime use is going to be much higher than the average for the year. This was based on reported use during 2007, a dry, below average climate year that had a maximum average ratio of 1.4 to 1. This produces a maximum monthly demand of 937,370 gallons per day, to which is added 66,114 gallons per day for 30 days at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, to account for climate change. Next slide. This slide demonstrates methods I developed for MDE that are used to estimate well yields in fractured rock aquifers. Data is taken from semi-log plots, which is log time, which is the horizontal scale, versus linear drawdown, which is the vertical scale. Breaks in drawdown data or deviations from type curves are used to estimate depths of reservoir units. For example, in the case of well 7, which is a lower figure, the break occurred at a drawdown of 228 feet, which you can see the type curve is that light blue line. Are you guys seeing this up here? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
There's another screen.
Oh,
It's
okay,
right there.
I wondered.
Yeah.
Well, you seem to be.
We're staring at you.
following, but you're not looking at the.
Yeah.
Oh,
Screen
okay.
right
Got
there.
it
Oh,
there,
okay,
got it
okay. I'm
here.
glad to.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. So I wondered what you were doing. Okay, where am I now?
Yeah, listening.
Okay. Then drawdowns are extrapolated to 90 days from the type curves. One example is for well 6. You can see the dashed arrows pointing at 90 days. So that's the drawdown at 90 days. You have to calculate what the specific drawdown is at that point and apply it to the drawdown to the reservoir unit. This determines the well's estimated yield. The result then has to be adjusted for drought yield using another method I developed for MDE. I don't have time within 15 minutes to explain that. The yields are then corrected for well interference, which we've identified some of them in Poolesville to date, and the damage to wells 6 and 7 due to dewatering of reservoir units. Next slide. This table shows results of using the MDE method to estimate the well yields in Poolesville. The Poolesville total well system yield is 750 gallons per minute to meet maximum monthly demand. That's summertime demand. Now we're starting getting into climate change. This ICPRB, which stands for Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin, this table contains averages of annual precipitation, evapotranspiration, storm flow, and base flow for the base scenarios. I don't ask you to actually understand. I'm using this as an example, okay? It's too complex for you to actually understand it just by looking at it in a few minutes. But this evaluation contains factors for the base scenario, which is 1988 to 1999, and 18 climate change scenarios ending in 2040, which is now just around the corner. This is for the upper portion of the Potomac River Basin, which Poolesville is in. The average annual base flow decreases by 15% overall and 3% to 33% in 16 out of the 18 scenarios. For 7 applicable scenarios where rainfall and temperature both increase, the annual average reduction in base flow or effective recharge to the wells is 8.4%. During a drought, the average reduction in base flow is 16%. Next one. Using these factors, I've estimated the drought yield adjusted for climate change for Poolesville's water supply. The total estimated maximum yield of the wells in the Horsepen Branch watershed is 330 gallons per minute. The reduction of 16% produces 277 gallons per minute, but the permit is limited by water balance to 269 gallons per minute. The total drought yield of wells in the Russell Branch watershed is 175 gallons per minute. A reduction of 16% equals 147 gallons per minute. But the use in the watershed is limited by water balance to 126 gallons per minute. The remaining wells have a total estimated drought yield of 223 gallons per minute, which if reduced by 16% produces a yield of 187 gallons per minute. The total adjusted system drought yield is then 582 gallons per minute, or 838,100 gallons per day during the maximum month. At the maximum average ratio of 1.5 to 1, the average use would be 558,700 gallons per day. This would be insufficient to meet existing drought demand without water restrictions in place, or the planned population of 6,500. Next slide. Under average climatic conditions as a result of climate change, there should be an adequate water supply to serve the existing town population of 5,772. During a moderately severe drought, water restrictions might be required. At a population of 6,500, voluntary water restrictions may be required under dry, below average climates, but non-drought conditions. Mandatory water restrictions likely would be required during moderately severe droughts. Water supply will be at even higher risk during severe and extreme droughts. These are my following recommendations. Careful monitoring of system production and periodic evaluations are needed to verify the effects of climate change on well yields due to reduced recharge and increased well interference. Additional biological surveys of Horsepen Branch and Russell Branch should be performed to better determine the degree of existing stream degradation in those watersheds and the additional effects of climate change. Groundwater exploration should be conducted in the Broad Run watershed due to the excess watershed water balance capacity. Since the best existing wells in the town are located near the middle of town, this program should be started as soon as possible, as high-yielding wells in the Broad Run watershed are not guaranteed. Water balance in Dry Seneca Creek is favorable, but past exploration efforts have been relatively unsuccessful in that watershed. Next slide. These are just a list of the primary references I use in my investigation. That's it.
I mean, that's great. Thank you, Pat. We just, for the public's knowledge, we just got the summary just a little bit before our meeting tonight, so we're getting a chance to absorb it now. We really do appreciate the explanation of it that you've given us. I open it up to the commissioners to have questions before we move on to Kathy's report. I look over here, but I mean you guys too.
Well, I think it would take some time to absorb it, so.
Thank you, I
was
appreciate
gonna
it.
say, I might have more questions also once we hear what Kathy has to say. Yeah.
Pat, I feel weird calling you Pat because you're probably a doctor or something like that.
No,
okay.
but I have 7 peer-reviewed publications. That's considered doctorate level work.
Thank you. Yes, doctorate level Pat, I have a question for you. So, and these are just some recommendations and questions about the recommendations, and I'm sure town staff and as the public probably knows, we've met several times offline with Pat and with Kathy, and these recommendations, several of them are definitely underway or being explored at this time. But I wanted to ask a couple different questions for it. One was, you said in the report that additional capacity is available through Dry Seneca Creek, but then you're saying that the water balance is still favorable there, so there's a possibility for more exploration. It's just in the past it has not yielded.
Right. I'm really recommending looking at Broad Run first.
Right.
Because you've got a better chance of finding wells over there. Because what happens in Dry Seneca Creek, there's actually 2 types of geology there. One's called crystalline rock, which are poorly producing wells. And then you have the Triassic, which most of your wells are in. Those are pretty good at yielding wells. So you're right at the transition. So there's something going on there that the Triassics, if you hit the Triassics, they don't seem to produce. We don't have enough geologic information to explain why that is, but you just know from history, they haven't found a good well there, and they have tried.
Right.
I think there's at least, anybody here at that time? Well, this is a while ago. This happened maybe 20 years ago. I don't think they've tried anything since, but they drilled 4 or 5 wells over there, and they only have, I think, I'm not even sure if well 7 is in Dry Seneca. I think.
Elgin was in, is Elgin Park well in Dry Seneca?
Elgin Park?
Yeah.
North.
Oh, no, that's Triassics.
Yes.
That's well 13? 13, yeah, that's Triassics. All your wells are in Triassics. You haven't ever completed a well in crystalline rock or near the transition between crystalline and Triassics.
Very good.
So if you're going to spend your money, go to Dry Run first, if
Right.
you can.
Got it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes, we know it's a crapshoot if we can get it out of Dry Seneca Creek. So that we appreciate that recommendation both at the front end and as well as at the end here. Any other questions from the commissioners or commentary before we hear from Kathy Mim? And then we're going to come back for more questions if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, great. Thank
What
you
I'm
for
here
that.
for.
Much appreciated. That was a great report and
appreciate
a
it.
lot to absorb, and we appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you. And you're right. We don't understand it right off the bat, but we'll get there.
Yeah, I've got it almost hour and a half drive.
Well, we're going to need we'll probably.
I live on the other side of the state.
Oh, you do? Oh, thanks so much. Thanks for
Coming out today.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. We won't.
I'm just joking.
Okay. But I am serious about needing some tutorials, so we'll come back to you on that. Thank you for it. And then Kathy's going to set up.
We have a question now.
Oh yeah, back to back. Yes.
That's all right. I'd rather be at the side.
Presentation, so that we can kind of like look at the models.
Is that something we can make available on the website?
Make it available,
Yeah.
and it will also be on Montgomery Countryside Alliance's website. Thank you.
Okay,
Are you good to go,
I'm good to go.
Kathy? Thank you.
So, thank you, Pat, for your presentation. I didn't get to see that until like 10 minutes before I left my house. So I wasn't sure what you were going to have in there. So I may have done things a little bit differently here, but here we are. A long time ago, somebody said to me, when you're giving a presentation, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So I'm going to follow that mantra today, and I'm going to go first to the main conclusions. And these are just some main points that I hope you can understand by the end of the presentation and take this with you as we think about all of these issues in front of us. I've gone through Pat's report and, of course, our report by S.S. Papadopoulos and Associates with a fine-tooth comb. And in the end, I feel that the water demand and the well yield estimates are similar between the two reports until you get to the climate change considerations, and that's where things deviate, which is fine. We did take some of this information to NDE to talk with them about, climate change and other issues. And what they told us was that they didn't anticipate changes to the water management strategies for municipalities due to climate change. That doesn't mean you can't do it, but MDE is not requiring municipalities to do this. I don't know whether they will at some point in the future, but this is when they told us back, last October, August? I don't remember when it was. It was last.
That they
2024.
haven't made any over the last, I don't know, ever?
They didn't anticipate any
Okay.
requiring, because there's such uncertainty about what climate change, what the result is. So
Will
it's
do.
hard to tell a municipality, you need to do this, when we don't really know what's coming down the line. So I think it's due to just the uncertainty that's out there. Now, that may all change, but for now, that's what our understanding is, NDE's position on this. And then we also talked about, the allocations and some of the Horsepen Branch and other, just the whole allocation for the town of Poolesville. And they also stated that they did not anticipate any reductions in the town water allocations. And they also recommended that we pursue getting the, oh gosh, is that going to do that every time? Getting all the water allocation permits renewed when the first one comes due, which is in February 2026. So the recommendation is for the town to work towards getting this, getting the water allocation permits renewed through MDE within the, by early 2026. And I think when MDE does this, they'll take a closer look at the water system, because they've just been kind of busy and it's really been hard to get information from them. But I'm hoping if we bring this to the forefront with them, we'll get a good shakedown from MDE on the town allocations and whatnot. And then the other thing that they, in our conversations with us, they realized, oh, you're within 80% of your annual daily maximum, or your average daily demand use number, which I'll get to in a minute. But they said you should prepare a capacity management plan. And we did this. We developed a capacity management plan, sent it to MDE, and after many, many months, they did approve it, just because they hadn't even looked at it, I don't think, but they finally approved it. And in this plan, when we developed it, we only included development for the homes that are approved under construction. Not up to a population 6,500, but it was about 120 new homes, and the population, well, it gets into some weeds on there, but I'll say it's 4385 population.
So you're saying the existing developments that are in progress right now,
85, thank you.
the existing developments that are in progress right now, next
The
door,
ones that are approved, and I got
Approved.
information from Wade, it was 120 homes, it was the ones there, I don't know, it
Yep.
ended up to
Next door,
be,
the Willard property, the townhomes next to CVS, that'll be there, Mr. Hart's, and then there's a onesie twosie somewhere. Then there's also some other lots that are out there that have not come forth asking for allocations, but Jay has opined that they have a right to that water, so we need to set that aside also in the event that it does occur in the future.
That's the 120 number total.
That's what the.
Yep.
Yep.
So that includes the ones that have a right to it but haven't been officially approved yet?
Yes.
Okay.
next slide, please. So I'm going to just take a few minutes and give some background on the well field, maybe touch a few things that Pat maybe didn't get to. Well, he probably got to this, but anyway, let's, okay. So one thing on this slide is that well, let's go to the next slide, sorry. Okay, we'll go to this slide. So this slide, the colored areas you see are the watersheds. That's what we're always talking about, watersheds. There's the Dry Seneca Creek watershed, the yellow one. The Kelly green one is the Russell Branch watershed. The orange one is the Horsepen Branch watershed. And the blue one is the Broad Run watershed. The sort of geometric blob in the middle of all that is the boundaries of the town of Poolesville. And then the dots that you can see, and probably can't read the numbers on them, those are the wells that are currently operating for the town. Now, each one of those wells, wherever it lands on the map, that is allocated, that water is allocated to that watershed. So its location on the map is important in terms of the way MDE does the allocations. And the other thing that's important is the area of the town, within the town boundary that's within that watershed. Because the MDE uses that area to calculate, okay, you've got this much area, we'll give you so much water, essentially per acre, and this is how much water you can withdraw from these wells in this watershed without causing undue impacts to base flow of streams, and there's some other calculations that go into play. Yes, Sarah.
Quick question. How frequently does MDE renew these water permits?
12 years? 12 years, yeah.
12 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we're getting our renewals are this next year, 2026?
Well, one is due in.
Oh, so they're
but
not all on
they
the same
suggested-
timeline?
They suggested to just do them all at once, rather than this.
Get them all on the same page, then renewal will all be the same.
We can renew them early, so the plan is to renew them
All
all at
in
the same
2026.
time. That way MDE will look at the whole well system as a whole and give us a good
That's a better-
assessment of what we have to move forward.
Okay.
Pat's got something too.
12 years is the maximum. Sometimes they'll issue a permit for less than 12 years if there's some issue that
Okay.
hasn't been resolved. So they give you a shorter period in order to basically collect more data.
So historically, for us, it's been 12 years. It doesn't mean it's always going to be 12 years in the future if they find some issue.
It probably
We
will
issued a
stick
few
with,
permits for 3 years. When there were potential impacts like to Sugarland Forest, those might have been 3-year permits in order to just collect data. And
Okay.
in fact, they were, and then they were renewed. It took 6 years to see the impact, so that they were renewed twice, 3 years twice, and then the impacts occurred.
Okay. And how interconnected are these watersheds with one another?
very interconnected. I'll get to that.
Okay,
In a
excellent. Wait
few
till you
or
get
several slides, we'll get to
I'll
that.
have to make a comment too about why, because I'm the one that developed the water management strategy.
Okay. So in each permit, there's two important numbers in particular. One is the daily average withdrawals on a yearly basis. So it's an annual daily average gallons per day. And the other is the daily average gallons per day during the month of maximum use, which is typically in the summer. It should be in the summer, although sometimes water leaks cause it to be in another month. You advance, please. So this slide is just showing, to the far left side, we have the permits, the wells that are under those permits, the watershed that those wells occur in, and then the permitted daily average withdrawals in gallons per day, and the permitted daily average during the month of maximum use. And then this was just, the last column just says how I was referring to them in our report. We don't have to worry about that. But the important numbers to pull from this are, at the bottom I have in red, I have the 650,000 gallons per day. That's the total of all these permits together. So that's what the total annual average gallons per day that the town of Poolesville is allowed to withdraw from their permitted wells through the state of Maryland. The other number is the 910,000 gallons per day, which is the allowable withdrawals during the month of maximum use. Okay, we can go to the next one. On this chart, I'm showing on the far left side, each one of those bars is a year. It starts at 2007, and I've updated it to 2024. And you can't read the axis over there, but let's see. Well, okay, so demand has been increasing since 2007. Population has increased. I don't show population on here, but the red line across the top is the permit limit of 650,000 gallons per day at average daily use. So the town has been far below the 650,000 gallon per day average daily demand. And when we were talking with MDE, that green line that just showed up is the 80% of 650,000 gallons per day, and it was because we were exceeding this 80%, they said, aha, you need to work on a capacity management plan, which we did. And I'll ignore that little red line for just a second, in case it comes up later. Go ahead, Niles, please. Yep. So the capacity management plan that we prepared for MDE It evaluates water demand, additional demand of the approved developments, and it evaluates the water system capacity. We submitted it in October. They approved it in March. And again, the approved capacity management plan supports that there's sufficient capacity to support the additional 120 homes approximately that are approved for construction. Can we go down to the next one, Niles, please? Okay. So back in 2021, the town contracted with S.S. Papadopoulos Associates to conduct an independent assessment of the town water supply. We completed an in-depth and detailed and thorough review of the water use data and the well operational data. And we concluded that the town water supply was sufficient to supply the water demand for a population of 6,500. It was very close, but on paper, you were right at the bar. So that was the conclusion, that there is sufficient for 6,500. And we also noted that additional wells would be beneficial in the event of more severe droughts or water quality impacts that may occur, and which did occur. Our climate evaluation, we looked at climate studies through the Mid-Atlantic, and a lot of studies were predicting wetter conditions, more precipitation in the winter and the spring, and temperatures, of course, were expected to increase by a few degrees Fahrenheit. We did some analyses to look at the relationship between the maximum daily air temperature and the groundwater withdrawals, and came up with some formulas of when it's over 100 degrees, there's an additional demand on the system. And we included a very, very conservative allotment of 30 days in 1 month with a temperature over 100 degrees, which was very conservative. I mean, I hope we never get anywhere quite that hot around here, but we were trying to be conservative, and so we'll include this in and see where we end up. Okay, and to the next one. I'm getting confused between your moving things forward and my moving things forward here. Okay. And then Montgomery Countryside Alliance contracted with Pat Hammond to evaluate the Poolesville water supply. The report was released, I'm not sure it was July or August 2024, or at least that we got a copy of it, or the town got a copy of it. And in this report, at projected populations of 6,500, it predicted water shortages, especially if climate change was being considered. There's some differences in the periods of the data that Mr. Hammond's report relied on. They have a more severe drought factor than we had used. Their climate change predictions reduce aquifer recharge to the wells. In our analysis, we looked at stream flow data and precipitation, and the recent data showed that things were increasing rather than decreasing, but that's a large uncertainty. And relies on, and their report also relies on increased water demand due to climate change, which I'll get into in a few minutes. Okay. I just want to emphasize that water issues are taken very seriously by the town of Poolesville. I mean, the town works very hard on their water supply. They take excellent records. They have a great history of record keeping and management of the wells. We consulted with MDE on the MCA Hammond report, and this is where we discussed with them with MDE, and they suggested renewing the permits. They didn't anticipate changes to the permit allocations, and didn't have any recommendations really to make in terms of addressing climate change because of the uncertainty. And I just want to mention that water management is hard. It's hard to predict people's behavior. It's impossible to predict when it's going to be a drought. It's really hard to predict the impacts of climate change, but we have to do the best we can. And the important thing, I feel, for water management is you want to keep things in balance. You want to have a reasonably conservative approach so that you have enough demand when you need it, but not so much that you've overspent and you have 10 wells that you don't need, and you have all this extra infrastructure that you've paid for that you're never going to use. So it's an important balance to have, and I called it the Goldilocks principle because everybody knows what that means, but it really does apply to this case, where you definitely don't want too little water, and you probably don't want too many wells, and it's just, you don't need, you don't need to overdevelop the infrastructure, but you want to have enough. And it's really hard to know what is enough. So it's a very difficult issue, but, you know, we're doing the best we can to get to an answer. I'm giving up on mine. It keeps quitting on me, so I'm talking too much, and it doesn't know I'm here, I guess. So one of the main points I started with my first slide, when I told you what I was going to tell you, now I'm going to tell you, is that the well yield estimates are similar between the SSPA report and the MCA Hammond report. Both predict somewhere between 725 to 750 gallons per minute. We made an error in identifying that mysterious well 9, which Pat picked up on. But if we correct for that, it increases our yield. So we're pretty much in agreement, 725 to 750 under drought conditions. When you convert this to gallons per day, it's over 1 million gallons a day. So there's a lot of water that the town can withdraw from the wells that it has, that are in place and operating. Now, the MDE permits only 910,000 gallons per day of that over 1 million gallons a day. So we have more than MDE permits allow us to use. You can go to the next one. And so that's water yield. That's what the wells can produce. The other part of the water balance formula is what is your demand. You have this much water to supply, this much yield out of the wells, how much does the town need of that? And again, our estimates of water demand are similar between the SSP&A report and the MCA Hammond report up until the point of climate change impacts. There are some differences, and I'll get into those in a few minutes, but it's really when you get to the climate change impacts that things deviate significantly.
Can I make a point?
Yes.
Before we get away from that ratio, 1.331 was for January of 2014. That's not a peaking demand.
Right.
It's likely, I've mentioned this before, it's likely a leak in the system. Because in January, your demand's usually the lowest, not the highest.
The reason we use that, because it was the maximum during our time period, and I was trying to use the highest one that was
I
it.
keep pointing it out that it's not proper to use that.
Well, it's not. I think our other one was 1.32, so I took the higher one, which was 1.33. So I was trying to be conservative. That's what our data showed us, so I wasn't going to put in something that wasn't according to our data. Now, the MCA Hammond report used a peaking factor of 1.4, which is, it may not sound like a big difference, but it makes a lot of difference when you're factoring in your month of maximum use demand. And we'll get into that. And the 1.4 is fine to use, but you need to recognize that it is a conservative estimate. And when we talked with MDE, they were recommending using something even less than what we were using. So again, I'd like to get with MDE and say, what do you want us to use? Because I don't know. We did the best we could. We used the highest numbers we have. Pat used the higher number, and the MDE says, you don't need using that high.
I just say these are procedures I developed for MDE.
Well, they might not be reading them, Pat. I don't know.
They
Yeah, but this is something that I want, if we get all of our permits in front of the MDE, to have them look at it, because they're kind of busy, and I think we're just kind of pesky to them, and they don't, I don't know if they've really given the attention that we would want them to give to this issue, because it is very important.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, next one. Okay, this is just sort of a summary of the SSP&A report on the left side, the Hammond MCA report on the right side. I think you can go, because it's going to show little ovals to show what to look at. Okay, when I say the estimates are similar for the average daily demand with a population of 6,500, SSP&A had 591,000. Average daily demand for MCA Hammond was 603,000. So 603, that's pretty close. Hit again. Okay, then when we add 10% for drought, and then add this peaking factor of either 1.33 or 1.4, SSP&A had a month of maximum use drought demand of 864,000. MCA Hammond report has an average daily maximum drought demand of 938,000. So there's a little higher. Now, again, on the far left side, the MDE permits are 910,000 or 650,000. So the MCA Hammond estimate of 937,000 is a little higher than 910, but it's kind of close. And then the bottom, then the bottom line is when we did our climate, the results of our climate assessment, which we ended up with 920,000 gallons per day under the climate scenarios for a population of 6,500. The MCA Hammond estimates were over 1 million gallons a day, which is quite a bit in excess of the 910,000 gallon per day permitted withdrawal rates. So if that becomes a value that MDE thinks we should be shooting to, or we got a lot of work to do in terms of getting our permits. Now, I think that number's an overestimate, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but just it signifies it could be an issue. If you could go ahead, Niles. Oh, so the next slide, I'm going to key in just on that red box, which is a portion of the MCA Hammond estimates for water demand. And I'm going to focus, go ahead. Just focus on what the estimates would be without climate change for a population of 6,500. Because there wasn't an obvious conclusion in the report on, of a population of 6,500, this is the projected demand in the MCA Hammond report. And I went through it very carefully. There were estimates with climate change, but not without climate change. And I was trying to tease out, where is this? So I'm taking that box that was on the right-hand side in the previous slide, and I'm blowing it up here so we can see this. And I just did a little correction where I took out the 30 days greater than 100 degree factor to get to these numbers that we have here. And at the average daily maximum month drop demand with a peaking factor of 1.4, that blue area, highlighted area on the bottom, has a month of maximum use drop demand without climate change of about 930,000 gallons per day. Okay. Now the wells can produce, remember this is the yield, can produce over 1 million gallons a day. So there's water in the aquifer, we just can't get to it due to the MDE permits, or MDE permitted limits of the permitted wells. So when I look at these numbers, I came away with the conclusion that the calculations performed by Mr. Hammond do support that the well field can support a population of 6,500 without climate change. We may be in a little excess using the factor of 1.4, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. And the reason I thought to bring this up, and I hope I don't get in trouble for mentioning this, but there's an excerpt in the report, and I know Pat, he issued a technical report which was then reformatted and released to the public. And in one section of the report, if you go to the next page, please. That's stuff I just did. So there's an excerpt of the language that Pat had his in report, which was really language directed at the climate change scenario, but it's pulled out and put in a sort of a very visible excerpt in the report. And when you read this, you don't know it's tied to climate change. You think, oh, a population of 6,500, there's not going to be enough water for anybody. And I just thought that was taken out of context. And the reason I bring it up was that there's been a lot of public interest in these documents, and I want to be sure that we can clarify this. And is it taken out of context, and is that possibly leading to some alarm to the public that may not be founded?
And I mentioned, I addressed that in my talk. If you missed it, I changed that evaluation. Now, what I said was 6,500 under dry, but below average, not drought conditions.
Right, no.
You may have to have water restrictions. And severe water restrictions.
Well, this is
I said moderately severe water restrictions during, water restrictions during a moderate drought. And then my comment there about high risk during extreme droughts, I did not change.
So may I address, I think what Kathy's saying is she's saying that this creates alarm because it seems to be out of context with the fact that statement is related to climate change, which Kathy seems to be saying is a disputed component of this. Just to be clear, our report takes as fact changing climatic conditions that will affect wells within Poolesville and the agricultural reserve. And we have, Pat has relied on the significant modeling from the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin, which is a basis for that statement. So it's taken out of context on that screen, but within the context of the report, which factors in climate change, it's within context.
No, I don't disagree with this at all. In the context, and what Pat wrote, I have no issues with what Pat wrote. The thing I had issue with was this pulling out this text, taking it out of the context of climate change. To the average reader thumbing through the report, they see that and they're like, oh. And I think that's a little disingenuous to what Pat's evaluation, which did include climate change. So I don't want to belabor this. I just think
I see what you're saying.
I just say it's a little out of context, and to the average reader or someone flipping through, you know.
Well, yeah, I'm sure.
They would.
It's granted that the average reader looking at Pat's report is going to find it difficult to
Well, it
exit.
could be, but this, anyway, I don't want to belabor it. I just wanted to say that, this same phrase is in the report in several other locations, but each other location, it's clearly that it's in climate change, which is fine. I have no issue with that at all. I was just pulling up this one for the public reading this, and if someone in the public says, yeah, I saw that, and it really led me to believe that Poolesville didn't have enough water, it's like, okay, well, hold on, because it really was supposed to be presented in terms of the impacts of climate change in addition. So, anyway,
Understood.
I didn't want to make that a major point. I just wanted to mention it in case people in the public saw this, and they listen to my talk, and they're like, well, wait a minute, how come they say they don't have enough water at 6,500? It's like, 6,500 with climate change is different than, that's all all I'm trying to say
The
here.
problem occurs in climate change. You may still have, I said, voluntary water restrictions at 6,500.
Of course, yeah.
Mandatory under a moderate to severe drought. Climate change does change that
Right,
dramatically because we're talking about a substantial decrease in reliable yields.
Yes, yes. Don't disagree at all.
We understand. Thank you
Okay.
for the clarity.
Okay. Okay, I guess, I don't know if I want to go into all this. I did have some sort of technical concerns with climate change estimates, and I know, well, I think I may just.
We might have questions,
Okay,
so.
okay, well, okay. Okay.
This is all very technical. We appreciate you.
No, it's just that the estimates for with the climate change of the MCA Hammond report are they're very conservative and demands over 1 million gallons a day. Remember, I said that could result in permit issues, which, it could result in that. And also the demand estimates that were relied upon the factor we use, SSP&A use, of 30 days with air temperatures over 100 degrees. Now, we use that as a very conservative estimate, and we use it in conjunction with a peaking factor of 1.33, whereas Hammond MCA report used a higher peaking factor, and then also added the 30 days of temperatures above 100 degrees. And, well, it's a little bit of double counting. Now, I know we use that factor and we developed it, but we used it knowing that there's not going to be 30 days within 1 month of temperatures of over 100 degrees.
Right.
At least in the next 20 or 30 years. So it was a very conservative factor, which this person can use. You can use it, but you have to recognize that it's adding a lot more to your demand than is probably realistically conservative.
So how do you know that it's not going to be 30 days?
Well, some of the climate studies I've seen have been like maybe another 5 days of over 100 degrees in the Mid-Atlantic.
You need to document that.
I can. I mean, I didn't want to get into climate studies
You don't have to
here
do it
now,
now, but you need
but-
to document it
Yeah.
because it was important. I accepted your value at face value.
Right, well, and
I didn't even try to challenge it.
I'm not.
I need to know the basis for it now.
I will want to get, and Kathy, you can continue, but I do want to get, at one point or another, a definition, because the peaking factor is the factor here. So if we're having a divergence between the climate change models, it's all about how is the peaking factor developed, and why is 1.4 more legit than 1.33 or vice versa. And I do think also too, and I'm sure you're going to get to it, but I believe that MDE, have they weighed in on this? And I know Pat has an extensive background with MDE, obviously, but
We discussed.
and if you're going to
it
get
with
to it,
them.
that's fine.
No, I wasn't. We discussed it with them, and they didn't give a very good answer, at least not a satisfactory answer.
Right.
Because it was really, I didn't think it was conservative enough.
Mm-hmm.
So like, even the 1.3
Wow.
we used, they probably would have used like 1.2.
I might have mentioned.
Okay.
I developed
Interesting.
these peaking factors back in 2004. And it was included in one of my peer review publications. And I didn't just look at Poolesville, I looked at virtually every town in the state, which I had sufficient information. Not all towns were keeping the best information, but I had 25 or 30. And in this case, with Poolesville, I came up with 2007 in July, the peak was 1.38 to 1. Well, 2007 wasn't a drought. It was a dry year, below average, but it wasn't a drought. So that 1.4 factor could have been even higher if there was a drought.
On top of the conditions that were taking place.
During droughts, most systems go on water restrictions. And what that does is it cuts your peaking factor down to nothing.
Right.
And that's why I have to estimate what's going to happen with the best available data, which is usually years that are dry but not droughts, and they have ratios 1.3 to 1.5.
Understood.
I don't consider 1.4 that conservative because it didn't occur during a drought year.
Understood.
And I mentioned the 1.33 occurred during January of a non-drought year.
We understand, I understand, I know the commissioners do understand the creation of the projection for that.
But
So,
you gotta understand that those numbers have a basis.
Sure, of course, yeah.
They're
Yeah.
fluid.
And there's nothing, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't use 1.4, I'm just saying we used a lower factor.
But you
And-
say it's conservative, I say it's maybe not conservative enough.
Okay, well, what I
Understood.
understood. from MDE
That's the future.
That was conservative, but
Yeah.
that's a,
I appreciate the overall conversation on the peaking factor. That's a big deal.
it is a big deal because it really sways, I mean, if one thing is critical in all these evaluations is like, what's the right peaking factor to use?
And we appreciated the general conversation on that. And I think what it'll do is we'll tie this into recommendations when you wrap up your side of this. And I appreciate the difference in the nomenclature between the two of you on it and MDE's, position.
Okay, so we'll go to the next one. So just to summarize on the climate change, from our perspective, the climate change predictions are very uncertain. There may be more water, there may be less water, we don't really know. There's likely to be some increased demand during hot, dry periods in the summer due to higher air temperatures. How much, how many? I don't know. And it's very challenging to incorporate this into planning due to these uncertainties, unknowns. But it is important, and we do need to consider these things. So I'm not saying anything, is out of, it should not be done. I'm just saying it is important, but there's just a lot of uncertainty, and it's really difficult to predict something where you can quantify it. Again, MDE doesn't anticipate changing the wastewater management practices based on climate predictions. And Poolesville is very proactive in this. Another kudos to Poolesville for looking ahead. When we were requested to do the study back in 2021, the town said, well, look at climate change a little bit and see what this might do to your estimates. So we did, and that is proactive, and I think Poolesville is doing a great job in staying ahead of the pack. And Pat had talked about the calculations that he completed that said there'd be a 16 reduction in well yield as a result of climate change. And 16% reduction in well yield would be significant. I mean, that would be, you would see that in your wells. And I'll just leave it there, because I've already gone over the yield of the wells. But we can go to the next one. Oh, let's see, what have I, okay. You may need to adjust I think I've already gone over this, that you may need to adjust your permits with MDE if climate change becomes a factor that is to considered in the demand down the line and the yield down the line. Now, the town wells, remember I said the town wells can produce over 1 million gallons a day. Not every day, but for a short period of time, over 1 million gallons a day, which should be enough to produce any of the projected demand that we're talking about. The problem is that there's watershed limitations. There's too many wells in this watershed, not enough wells in that watershed. The town boundary is where it is. If the town boundary was different, we'd have different allocation. The other thing we can do is to get water easements from adjacent landowners who says, I'm never going to develop my property. You can have my water included in your allocation through the state of Maryland. So these are all options we have. I think these are solvable problems, but it's going to take some work and some forward thinking to get us there. Another option is to, of course, develop an additional well or wells to provide additional yield. And Pat alluded to some proposed watersheds where that might be appropriate to do.
So just a point of clarification. When you say that Poolesville wells could potentially produce over 1 million gallons, our permits are based on average daily use, so.
Average daily and the month of maximum.
Okay, so you could potentially go over our average daily if you are managing it and you have enough under daily averages in the year?
But we would want to violate a permit.
That was my question. Is the permit a fixed line, or is it taking into account average daily use?
Great question, and we talked to MDE about that, and they don't want to see you do that. It'd have to be an extraordinary cause, and I'll bring up, we had well 2 and 3 offline, and we had to pump the additional wells due to
Right.
costs. But we had to write a letter to them, show them their letter they sent to us saying, take these wells offline while you're mitigating this issue. And, then we were okay with us going over for that short period of time while we're mitigating the wells. But ordinary, you can probably answer better.
Let me mention, let's talk maximum monthly use. That's the average during the maximum month. So in any one day, you could exceed that average.
Okay, that's what my question was. Yes.
So, but as long as the average for the month is exceeded.
Okay.
And then you do that. They pump. They don't pump a lot at night or sometimes on weekends, so the peak may be higher than that during like a weekday or something. Would that sound?
You're right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
And then,
So active management in terms of a drought with either mandatory or voluntary restrictions.
well, that wouldn't be an issue because you don't use as much water.
Potentially.
You could avoid
In the summer months when people are wanting to water their gardens more or have their kids swim in the pool. Yeah,
The town has never come close to pumping 910,000 gallons in any day.
right.
I think
Okay.
the highest was like 876,000 gallons per day for 2 days during 2020, when everyone, it was like in July or August, everyone was home, they must have been dancing under their sprinklers or something, because for those 2 days, it was through the roof. And it's
One other thing why you don't
been much
exceed
less than that any other day in
the years
history, so.
during a drought, particularly 1999 to 2000, I don't know what it was, but you had water restrictions in place. If you had not had them in place, your water use would have gone sky high. And that you got to look at the whether you have restrictions in place. That seriously reduces the demand. It basically cuts it by a third usually.
Okay. Thank you.
Go to the next one, Niles, please. So now I just want to spend a few minutes and talk about the horse pen branch allocation, because this became an issue that people have been talking about. And I wanted to just mention a few things that we've observed through our studies for Poolesville. said previously, allocation for the Horse Pen Branch will be addressed with MDE by February 2026, we hope. Where we'll get the permit renewed. MDE stated that they did not expect a reduction in the permit allocation. That's what they said. We don't know what they'll actually do. And the other thing is, it's complicated. When you look at where the town is, it's at the apex of 4 watersheds, all these wells centered within the town boundary at the intersection of these 4 watersheds. And when you, especially in cases where there's a well right at the intersection of 2 watershed boundaries, like, I'll show it in a second. But remember, the different colored areas are various watersheds. So any of those dots you see that are right at the intersection, a line between 2 watersheds, that well is located right on the watershed boundary. And when you pump the water on that well, it's not just going to get the water from the watershed and he said it should get it from. It's going to get it from wherever it gets it from. And I'll show some figures later that'll show what this means in some simulations we did. And there's also issues like well 5 on the map. It's actually in the Broad Run watershed. It's allocated to the Dry Seneca Creek watershed, but if MDE really wrote the permits, they'd put all 5 in the Broad Run watershed, and then we'd be out of water in the Broad Run watershed. We'd have a permit issue in the Broad Run watershed.
That's an interpretation of where the boundary is.
Well,
Right.
this is based on
Yeah,
a
makes
GIS
sense.
simulation of
It's
the.
so close.
Well, I'm just saying, it could be here, it could be there. Right now, it's in Dry Seneca Creek.
Makes sense.
Fine, I'm not saying we should move it, I'm just saying it's
Right.
there's details here. And
Yeah.
the other thing, which I think Pat alluded to previously in his presentation, was the town withdraws significantly less than the permit for the Horse Pen Branch watershed allows. It's 293 or 253,000 gallons a day. And the town typically, it's been about 63% of that allocation during the time period we looked at, 2007 to 2020. It's probably still in excess of if it's on paper allotment. I mean, it's on paper recharge that it's allowed, but it's significantly less than the permitted limit. You can go to the next one, please.
Is this near the end?
It is near the end? Yeah, it is.
Because I want to come back to this.
Oh, okay. Well, let me finish, and then maybe you'll see what.
That's why I asked.
So I just highlighted in red the few wells that are like right at the apex of, or right at the intersection of 2 watersheds. You go to the next slide. So as part of the work we did in 2021, we developed a steady state numerical groundwater flow model. The sort of scrabbly black thing right in the middle of that grid is the town of Poolesville. The dots are the wells. Those are the streams, the Potomac River bordering the west side of that map. Essentially, it's a numerical model of the aquifer. It's a simple model. It's not a transient model. It's a steady state where we say, these are the parameters of the aquifer. This is how much recharge, how much rain you're going to get. Pump the wells and tell us what that does to the water table. That's essentially what we did. You can use various recharge rates and various pumping rates to do these simulations. And the end result of these simulations is the capture zone of each well. That is, for well 1, we're going to pump it at 50 gallons a minute, and under these conditions, the capture zone, the zone of water that's going to be captured by that well, is colored in some nice pastel color on the next slide. So this is a capture zone figure. Each one of those brightly colored blobs you see corresponds to the capture zone of one of the town wells pumping under this particular pumping scenario, which was average pumping with 8 inches of recharge. The red lines you see are the watershed boundary lines that we showed in the earlier slide. But when you look at, I think if you hit go, it'll show. So like the wells that are at the intersection of the watershed, like the dot right at the top in that sort of teal, I believe that's well 5, it's pulling water from both the Dry Seneca Creek and the Broad Run watershed. Well 2, which is that brightly colored green circle right in the middle, that's pulling water from 4 watersheds. And similarly, well 6 is pulling mostly from the Horse Pen Branch, but also some from Russell's Branch. Now, when we use an extreme simulation where we have just 4 inches of recharge, and this is maximum pumping. We'd never be able to actually get to this simulation, but if we did, I mean, in real world, we'd never want to do this to the aquifer, but if we did, this is the result of the capture zones. And you can see many of the wells are pulling water from multiple watersheds. And the reason the figure sort of has that horseshoe and goes up to the northeast corner, that's because the model is a 3-dimensional model, and you can't see there's water coming into those wells. They're just below the land surface. So the creek is showing the aquifer is recharging into the creek, which is a good thing, and then the capture zones surrounding that show the water being withdrawn into the wells. So the point of all this, you don't have to worry about all those details. The point of all this is that it's complicated where this water comes from. And these wells, especially ones that are located at the intersection of 2 watersheds, they're getting their water from multiple watersheds. And then the next slide, there's all the wells. And you can hit again. Okay. This is I had the capture zone, so then we went and calculated, okay, what percentage of the water pumped by this well is coming from each of these different watersheds? So this is sort of just a tabular look at the maps you just saw. So for example, Horse Pen Branch, I have the 2 pumping scenarios. If you follow like well 2 on the top row, under 8 inches of recharge, average pumping, it gets 1/3 of the water from Dry Seneca Creek, a little bit from Russell's Branch, and 40% from Horse Pen Branch. Now, well 2 is in the Horse Pen Branch watershed, so, okay, it's getting 40% of Horse Pen, the others from adjacent watersheds. Now, if we increase it to 4 inches recharge and maximum pumping, Dry Seneca is now providing 60% of the water to well 2, and only 9% coming from Horse Pen Branch. So there's a lot of variation. Now, these scenarios, I wouldn't go with either of these because this is based on data through 2020. I would want to update it and look at our pumping rates. But
they're
this is just to give you an
simulations.
example.
They're simulations.
It's a
They're not
simulation,
real.
yes. And it's easy to resimulate. We just got to get the numbers to resimulate. But hopefully you get the idea is that it's complicated and the water is coming from multiple watersheds. Go to the next slide, please. So then the other point about Horse Pen Branch watershed in particular, this is just a figure we had in our report where we had each of the orange bars is the average daily use during that year, with 2008 on the left side progressing over to 2020 in gallons per day, and it ranges from 150 to looks like about 250,000 gallons per day. The blue line across the top is the permitted limit from MDE of, I think it's 293,000 gallons per day. So the actual use the town has been using has been consistently much less than the permitted allotment. And if you advance again, this purple line is sort of the available recharge estimate. We did an available recharge estimate. Pat did an available recharge estimate. They were both very similar. I don't remember the number. It was like 132 and 137,000 gallons per day, based on the area of the town in that Horse Pen Branch watershed. So that purple line shows sort of on paper what the town should be getting for the Horse Pen Branch watershed. And clearly the town is using more than on paper.
Then how, like we're using faster than it can recharge?
No, what I mean is on paper, when I say on paper, I mean there's a certain area within of the town boundary that intersects the Horse Pen Branch watershed.
Oh, okay.
MDE will give you that much water depending on how much of the town is within that.
Like
Horse
proportionally how much is, okay.
If you add another 100 acres to the Horse Pen Branch watershed, either within the town boundary or through water easements, you could get your permit, or you could work to get your permit revised through MDE to add more allotment.
Okay.
So these are, things can move around.
That's helpful, thank you.
But they've been static for many, many years, so.
And all of our planning's been based on that static.
Yes, all.
Positioning.
It's been based on that.
Understood.
Okay, I think we're, so did you have something else to say about that, Pat?
Well, I was going to discuss the water balance method, but I need to use your,
Oh, okay. Do you want me to finish and then?
is this the last one?
No, I think, 2 more. We're almost done. Almost done. So I just wanted to take a step back and just sort of summarize. There are a lot of stressors on the well system. There's additional demand due to drought. There's water leaks. In 2020, we had a very high demand because everybody was home teleworking. And then there's reduced yield due to drought and climate change. And then there's also water quality impacts. When we wrote our report in 2021, we had this great thought that the town, there's nothing in the town wells. Well, within like a year, we got notice that there's PFAS compounds in the town wells. And because of this, the town will likely have to install treatment on many of the wells. And installing treatment, there's more things that can go wrong. The wells need to be down periodically to perform maintenance. So it adds another layer of complexity and sort of another stressor on the town water supply. And I just want to clearly state for anybody listening that in 2023 and 2024, any water restrictions you heard from the town of Poolesville, it was due to PFAS impacts, not insufficient yield in the wells, because there were numerous wells, including the highest producing wells down in the summertime for the last 2 years, which is a big stressor on the water system. So yes, there were water restrictions. No, they did not have anything to do with the water capacity that we're talking about here. It was solely due to PFAS impacts.
And just to clarify, that was well 2 was the primary well, which is our primary well. And that well was down for PFAS mitigation for,
2 summers.
yeah, a couple years.
Even well 3 was down through most of 2022,
Mhm.
and most of 2023.
And well 2 is back up currently, now.
As of last week.
Oh, okay, very good. And then it still has to be winterized, I guess, over a period of time in the future.
We're working on that.
Okay, got it. So typically, lower use wintertime anyway, but now that's something that is our next project, I guess, would be to take on and have well 2 be available for use in the wintertime due to winterization. Okay, thank
I
you.
think the last slide is coming up. Yes, okay. Oh, no, there's one more. Okay, well, we've done all these conclusions. You've heard my, my comments. This is what we started with. I'm not going to repeat all this because I think we've already addressed it all satisfactorily. Going to the next slide, which will be the last slide. Okay, so suggested actions. Pat had some very good recommendations. And I think, well, we'd like to work together with Pat to work on additional studies and aquifer testing for the town of Poolesville. Pat has a lot of experience and a lot of insight, and I want to take full advantage of that and make sure we're in a collaborative relationship to maximize the expertise.
That should have been during that should have been in the budget session, but we'll keep going.
It's a hugely valuable resource, and we need to work with that. I skipped the top one. Well, we will submit the water allocation permits to the MDE by February 2026. There may, well, I won't even, okay, I'll go to the next one, and pursue additional well or wells, and there's also, could be options for water easements from adjacent properties. We'll have to see where those things go. And my recommendation, due to the potential impacts of climate change, reduced yield, impacts of PFAS, and the actual daily use has been going up for the last couple of years, which I don't really know why. But until we can get a handle on these moving parts, I would recommend no additional approvals for new developments until the MDE permits are evaluated, and then we'll see. But certainly until MDE permits are evaluated, and I won't say beyond that because I don't know. But the developments that are underway now will. I think the build-out is through 2028, if I understand correctly, so.
Mm-hmm.
Just really know the impacts by
So,
then.
yeah. And also then to continue to rely on conservative, yet realistic water management practices. And another facet that we don't talk about too much is just improve water conservation and education programs for residents. I mean, saving water is always a good thing. I think that's the last slide.
So I talked to a group of Boy Scouts, and they're ready to jump on the water conservation aspect. So we've already got a group already lined up to help, in addition to everybody else.
I mean, we all should be doing that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's great.
It's always a good thing. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. That was a great presentation. Great compare and contrast to Pat's. Great illumination of Pat's report, and And Pat, I know that you wanted to go back to a slide, and we're welcome to come back to it. And if you want to come sit there again, talk about one of the pieces, that's fine.
Okay, it's the one, no, the Horsepin branch, well, one with the water.
No, it's go the other way.
Why don't you come to your groundwater flow model?
Oh, the flow model, okay. The one with all the colored.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Okay.
This one.
Right, and
Okay.
then I want to see the groundwater flow model.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's go to the water balance. That was developed about 1984. I started work in 87, and it was pretty rudimentary. Still, by most standards, would be fairly, it allows very easy calculations. And when I tried to upgrade their testing and evaluation program, I was looking at water balance. And I was considering, okay, why don't we require groundwater flow models? Until I looked at how many would be involved. We have 500 major permits, and which might, I don't know if all of them require groundwater flow model, but it was going to become inordinately expensive for the state to try to
Understood.
make permittees develop groundwater flow models, not just for water balance, but also impacts to wells like occurred in Sugarland Forest. You could try to better estimate the impacts to the watershed or the impacts to wells by using groundwater flow models. But we found that we were relatively successful just using simple analytical models, or trying to estimate what they're drying on. I did this for Sugarland Forest. I said, I can't predict if those wells will go dry, but there's a good chance they will. So they need to be monitored. And they did go dry. That was that was my best successful estimate in that nature. Point I'm trying to get at is it was going to become managerial difficult to require all these permittees to do groundwater flow models. I don't know what she charged you, but they are very expensive if done properly.
Mm-hmm.
This one was cheap because it was a simple one.
Huh?
Steady state.
It's
a steady state. It's a steady state.
Right.
model. Transient model, yes.
Simulation. Another thing, usually you don't have enough information, particularly with well interference, to actually do a reliable groundwater flow model. You have to have a lot of data to have those be accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can do a groundwater flow model and can be just as inaccurate as the water balance methods. So that was the reason, and we continued using water balance methods and analytical models, and we were having relatively good success. We even have fairly good success here. You're just arguing that you can get water out of Horsepin Branch from other watersheds. That's fine, but it's still impaired.
Mm-hmm.
It's been impaired since, who knows, the MBSS site survey was done in 2008. And that was not even during a drought year. That was actually, the climate during that year was above average. I don't know what it would have been like during a drought year. So that's my argument. It's still impaired. You can't just ignore it because you think water's coming from other watersheds.
Understood.
I don't agree with the impairment at all. My point was that.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah. It's good.
you can't, if you,
There's so much water being pumped, at the apex of all these watersheds. Unless we stop pumping water, it's.
I'm not saying that you necessarily do that.
How about this? Are we going to be able to tell from, and are we at the point, data collection wise, with the developments that we have coming on board, the impact of all those developments? Are they going to be able to give us usable data on the drawdowns and how each one of the draw areas are affected? Is that going to be something that we're going to get out of this?
Through a flow model or through?
Yeah, or through a flow model's fine.
I mean, as I say, our model is a very simple, steady state.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what she's saying is going to cost you a small fortune.
No,
if you want to
I
do
would
it
not
right.
recommend to do a transient model, because that would cost, it'd be 50 grand.
And that's what it would be, right?
We don't have enough data to calibrate it adequately, which is why we didn't even go there. We just have a very simple, bare bones, three-dimensional simulation to give you
And that's why I'm
idea.
saying we didn't go to groundwater flow models. They're just too expensive to ask 500 permittees to do them.
Which is totally understandable.
And that's just 500 permittees. Some of them have multiple permits like you guys.
Right, got it, and that makes sense. I have another question too, and sorry, I know if you had more on this, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think we've got a good.
No, I'm done.
Good dialogue going here, I appreciate that. What factor, how do we take into account, we're a measurable group here in Poolesville, right, with town limits, public water, we know what we're using, and we have a pretty good idea of the impact on our wells. What does the draw area outside of the town limits, farms, other uses, how does that play into, these branches and these watersheds are big, well beyond our town limits. I imagine we have, 1,900 houses here or something like that. What about, there's got to be another 1,500 houses outside of Poolesville that are using water that are inside.
Well, the houses that are using water.
And
they're
farms.
wells and septic, so the
Yeah.
effects on most of the water's returned to the ground, so the effect on recharge is limited. So you have to look at whether or not you're pumping water outside of the watershed, which you are, because you're pumping everything to your wastewater treatment plant in Seneca Creek, which is basically unaffected, and you're discharging water into Seneca Creek, dry Seneca Creek.
So normally it's not one-to-one, but it's something similar to what they use goes back in, and that's an acceptable scientific model for the use outside of the measurable areas?
Or a house well. I'm not talking about
Farms.
like
Yeah.
golf course, they have a permit and they have to abide by the same standards you do.
Yeah, yes.
And that's what's called a consumptive use, because during the summertime, all that water is going up in the air.
Right, yes. Okay, I'm good with this, but I also want to open it up to the audience to see if there's, and commissioners, you have questions, but audience, you can just raise your hand and I'll pick you, and feel free to ask both of our scientists that are here. Hang on, Gary's right behind you, raised first.
Let's either have them come up or repeat it, because the audience members
Yeah.
online are saying they can't hear the audience.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so feel free to come up to the microphone and ask the question. Thank you.
Getting text messages.
Thank you. Gary Hartz, 19101 Fisher Avenue. I have a question and a recommendation.
By the way.
One, on the maximum yield for the wells currently that can approach, I guess, about 1 million gallons, what's the pump cycle?
That's a full 24-hour running, which is not sustainable.
Okay, what's the pump cycle?
Actually, it's running about
Ed, tell Wade to pull his microphone.
That's what mine's based on, because that's what I recommended.
Okay, that's what I was interested in finding out, because if we're running 24/7, we got a problem. But you're answering my question. I've got a recommendation. You just got presentations from 2 experts in the field. They are tracking down the same road on 90%, 80% of their presentation. You got climate change included, no climate change.
No, that's not true.
Well, it kind of
When
comes.
that's not true, you can't say that.
It kind of comes across that way. That's not the gist of my recommendation. Just let me finish, please.
But forgive me for even thinking about correcting you. You know a lot of things.
Yeah, well,
but I just can't sit there and abide.
I will withdraw my statement.
Thank you.
We have different models of climate change.
Right.
My point is this: you don't throw it all out. You don't accept all of it.
Yeah.
You're in a position of public management. The bureaucracy always moves slow. If you have an issue related to water shortages, you don't want to be put in a position to have to respond tomorrow. You want to plan ahead. You've got the committee already set up. You're already doing that. Don't throw the baby out with the water on either side if you don't like the baby.
Unacceptable.
On either side. Take a public management position and be cautious. Go the middle ground and be prepared for the totally unknown. This is a highly complex issue. And we got people who are they'll continue to debate this till the cows come home. And there's not going to be a definitive answer on either way till we have a definitive problem. And I suggest you look at the middle ground as you come up with your recommendations as to how you want to proceed. That was my assessment. So be it. Thank you for the time.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Gary. Next, I'm sorry, go ahead, Pat, you go ahead.
Interesting.
I'll get you next, Bernie. Go ahead.
The time frame you're looking at, that ICPRB study I cited, it's actually through 2040. It's 16 years away. Not only that is, I've been looking at drought cycles. There have been significant droughts on about a 35-year cycle. I've traced it back almost 200 years, not through water supply, that ends about 100 years ago, but just looking at economic conditions when droughts occurred in the 1800s, because they were agricultural droughts, because that's what the U.S. was.
Right.
So the next cycle happens in about 10 years. So if you've got a problem, if you've got a problem, it's probably going to occur much faster than you think. It's not going to be 100 years from now. It could be the next 10 years. Now, it could be longer than that. It's really hard to predict these cycles. But I would suggest whatever you do, you've got to start doing it now.
It's good advice, and I'm sure we plan on doing that. And I appreciate that. Bernie, go ahead, come on up. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you. Bernie Mim of Elmer School Road in Dickerson, also property owner on Bud Road. Now, my wife told me, do not say anything. so I'm hoping she's not going to. Anybody have an extra room for me tonight, just in case? so Caroline did a super job introducing Pat, who is obviously a very experienced and excellent hydrogeologist. I just wanted to do the introduction for my wife.
Well, that's nice.
Very quickly.
Thank you, and I didn't get there, and I appreciate it.
There are people here, there are people listening, so forth. So Kathy also has a master's degree in geology as well as a bachelor's degree. She's worked at SS Papadopoulos for 35 years. Papadopoulos is, and people can look this up on the website, sspa.com. So Papadopoulos is not only nationally but internationally known for their expertise in groundwater studies. They do all sorts of things, Superfund sites, again, related to groundwater. Huge natural gas leaks, I know, into groundwater. That's one Kathy's been working on quite a bit. And even disputes between states that have gone to the Supreme Court. So they've testified, provided expert testified for that. So that was all I wanted to say. Again, the introduction to Pat was excellent. He's an excellent.
You had another 11 minutes. Are you sure?
No, I'm kidding.
Thank you, Bernie.
Bernie, thank you for that. So Tom, go ahead. Come on up.
How you doing? My name is Thomas McCaskill. I live at 17119 Spates Hill Road. I just had one question for Mr. Hammond. And I know you're the numbers and you're not a developer, so you don't know how many houses, but in your estimate, how many houses do you think that Poolesville could sustain right now? Conservatively.
It's probably going to go by population.
Referring to climate change is pretty much what they have now.
So what they had, so the house.
But that's considered climate change. If you don't consider climate change, yeah, we're pretty close to 6,500. I mean, there may be water restrictions during certain periods at that level, but
and I would
with climate change, it's almost guaranteed.
But I would assume that assumption's based, and I'm not going to get into climate change modeling. That's based on if we don't do anything in the future to manage it. Like, we don't move forward with some of the recommendations that have been made.
Well, yeah, remember, you drill wells in Broad Run. You get lucky.
Right.
They're high yielding. Even if they're not high yielding, you might get a 50-gallon per minute, 2 50-gallon per minute wells. Well, that may be what keeps you from breaking down.
And I think based on what, the testimony we received tonight, but again, this has been ongoing, and as Kathy said, it's difficult, and we're very well studied, and this is this is long time planning that's been going into this, including a lot of your expertise, Pat, over the years, and obviously Kathy's expertise too. I think the walkaway is the town's never going to say, we're done and we're set on, this is all we're going to do in terms of water management. I think we're always going to be forward thinking on water management, not necessarily for development, just proper water management and advanced water management. And taking the data that's come and is constantly developed and changing, thanks to our experts, to make proper policy changes and move forward. I mean, I think you could say that this board's united and has been united along with town staff, that we're going to be progressive and aggressive, like, say, we have been with PFAS mitigation. We were one of the first ones in the state to jump forward on that. So I appreciate the question, and it's a proper question for Pat, too.
And the one other thing I want to, I'm a master plumber gas fitter. I run Metro's plumbing division, the whole transit system. And we've had a whole bunch of water main breaks. I've been dealing with water municipalities. They're all talking about, we're in a current drought. They're already talking about, all kinds of water issues. And I understand that the planning for all these developments has been going on longer than I've been living in Poolesville. I understand that. Some of them not, but some of them have been.
Fair enough.
We have questions of whether we have enough water. There's different models for climate change and all that, but this is not just Poolesville. This is around the country. This is also just in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia, they're talking about it. Why? Okay, so we got a development get here that there's a question whether we have enough water, okay? Why are we going to go ahead and break ground right away over here? What's the rush at CVS to go ahead and break ground over here? I know that guys had permits since '97 or whatever it is, but if Mr. Hammond's right, and this comes up on us real quick, we got all these extra houses. How many houses over there? You got, what, 70 over here, like another, what, 20 or something over there, right? So you're looking at 90 houses. So then you're going to basically, you're looking at the situation. What's the rush is what I'm saying. Why can't we go ahead? You got this broken ground, okay? See how this goes for the next couple of years and see what happens. Maybe nothing happens. I hope I'm wrong, because I don't win nothing if I'm right. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, great, no house value. I can't flush my toilet. Wonderful. Why we have to rush to get to put this in? I understand this guy want to make money.
I don't think it has anything to do with it. It has to do with property rights and zoning, et cetera. But I'd rather have town staff address that, where we stand on that.
No, I don't think it's a rush. They're all just coming together at the same time, which is bizarre that it's happening this way, and it's very visible being on Fisher Avenue. But like this started in 2015, going through site plan review. Who knew it would take a decade before they were breaking ground on it? 2007, the water was allocated down here by the CVS property. Had no idea that it would, it's all just coming together at once, but it's been in the works forever, like you'd said.
Right. Okay.
So there's no rush. That's something we're not doing. And I think, and I know a lot of people maybe in this audience or listening online, they've heard me say this many times. A rush was the 1970s when we went from 343 residents to 3,400 residents in one decade. And the people should know that we haven't added 3,400 residents in the 45 years since that time period. So it is more of a confluence of what's happened all at one time. And I don't think we're ignoring the data and saying, and I appreciate the question. And you've had really good conversations with us over the last few weeks and months. It's just the timing of where these come together, and we don't have the data that says we don't have the water. To say that we don't have the water for that development, that's, conjecture, but I think that our scientists have told us otherwise.
We all know that government agencies are very slow to react. And, for the state, for the Maryland Department of Environment to want to go ahead and reduce tax revenue is a big deal. They don't want to reduce tax revenue. Maryland wants to build. We're in a position where Maryland needs money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I'm hoping that has not a damn thing to do with what we've done, but I hear you loud and clear. I hope not.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Thomas.
Okay, next up, anybody else in the back? Frank Jameson, come on up.
I'm Frank Jameson, 20621 West Hunter Road in Bellsville. How many wells are currently offline in the town, and how many wells, municipal wells, have been drilled into town that have not been hooked up?
It's just 2, 4 and 14.
And you have a municipal well that's been drilled that has not been hooked up? On the,
Oh, Cattell Jameson well out there, yes.
yeah.
It's kind of out of sight of infrastructure, so yes.
And that's in the dry Seneca Creek watershed?
Which well's that?
I don't know, it doesn't even have a number, I don't believe, does it?
Yeah. So you do have a well in the town that could be hooked up, and you have 2 that are offline.
Didn't they test it years ago?
Correct.
Yeah, it's
Thank
just sitting there.
That's all. Thank you.
Oh, I thought it didn't test very,
Pre,
the yield wasn't very high.
come on. Brian told me, he's like, you keep ignoring her.
Because I was making faces the whole time.
You can raise
He
your
was watching me. I'm Elizabeth Kenton, and I live in Boyd's, actually in Henley Hall. And kind of speaking from the perspective of the people that don't live in Boyd's, I mean, in Poolesville, you kind of see this, you guys are taking care of your water, you're taking care of your growth. I guess you're, now I learned you're kind of monitoring your streams and your flow, but nobody looks at anybody else's. So I've been living there for 31 years, and when we got there, there's springs everywhere in our property. There are springs to the point where they were annoying, and so we planted trees to try to soak up the water. But we have like had a real marsh in 2 areas, and we had salamanders, and we had turtles, and we had fish in the stream. And the stream, our springs fed a stream that goes into the Black Hills Regional Park Lake Reservoir. That thing is now trickling. So I do have like a question of, is it climate change? Is it the fact that everybody's pumping the water out? Because even though you look at those watersheds, everyone's pumping it out and they cross over. And like my next door neighbor tried to put in another well for their barn. They drilled and they drilled and they drilled, and there was no water.
Is this
Boyd's,
How far away is Boyd's
10 minutes.
in miles?
As a crow flies, maybe 8.
Okay, the maximum distance we observed drawdowns due to Poolesville's pumping is about 1 mile. And that was Sugar
Yeah.
Hill Forest.
But
And
I'm-
Also, the geology is different in Boyd's than it is in Poolesville. Those are crystalline rocks, and these are Triassics. These wells tend to be much higher yields. When you get Triassics, yields are much lower.
But even over in our area, they keep building and building on Peachtree. I would guess Peachtree isn't
I'm not
ours.
talking about
So I'm just saying, it's like, in the big picture, where
You're trying to find a culprit. Is there
trying
more?
to find a
Who's
culprit.
responsible for managing the entire?
Exactly.
Is that the county? Is that the state?
Depends where you are.
As far as water supply goes, that's
Yeah.
You can sit down if you want,
water
Pat.
supply program, MDE. They manage it through their permitting process. And so if they go in and we do these evaluations, try to determine whether streams will dry up or wells will
ours
dry
are
up,
drying up.
or springs will dry up. I've seen that happen in places, and the way it's handled is you provide those homeowners with replacement water supplies. How it's done, sometimes it may not be, they may not agree with it, but we've been successful in replacing water supplies. There's only one case, actually, it was up in Myersville, where they impacted wells and they had to hook them up to the water system because they could not replace their wells because they were in crystalline rock. They're low yielding, the replacement wells were probably going to be even less yielding. So they had to be hooked up to public water. And when I got involved with it, they were complaining about it because they said the public water's quality is a lot less than what their wells were producing. I said, I can't do anything about that. I don't address water quality issues.
So when they go and they put in 2 or 3 distilleries
Well, that's...
and over towards us.
Yeah, I wonder how, I haven't been involved in that, but distilleries, I assume, use a lot of water. But I can't say for sure because I've never done one.
Pat, do you
But-
mind if, when you're done, I have something to respond to her too. So.
Yeah, okay. they might have a problem finding enough water for a distillery, because that's, again, like it's crystalline rock. That's hard to find high-yielding wells in crystalline rock. So if they need a lot of water, they may come over here.
Well, you've gotten some good free advice. I don't know where it's going to go with you,
Yeah,
but
no, and I mean, it was also just kind of from our perspective, which I'm glad to now know we're in a different zone.
She knows something about this, because she's been asking me about distilleries.
Right.
If I could just step to the mic
Yeah.
for a second, and I realize the time, but I do feel like, first of all, thank you for bringing your story from outside of the town. This is what we're hearing more and more often from MCA with regard to observations on surface water, stream flow, springs and seeps. And the goal of the program that MCA has launched with the Chesapeake Bay Trust funds is to create, first of all, education so people understand the nature of the resource throughout the unconfined aquifer. Secondly, to help us to conserve it better as individual well holders and as the town of Poolesville. But thirdly, is to build momentum to ask our legislators to create an advisory committee, some appointed committee, to actually shepherd and safeguard the resource. Currently, we don't have any entity that watches out for our aquifer, that watches the monitoring of it, that looks at surface water effects, et cetera, and helps us understand how to best manage the resource in terms of withdrawals, to look at
Right.
distilleries.
It'd be nice to know somebody's looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, a minute or two ago, someone brought up property rights. Absolutely, but property rights are dependent upon adequate public facilities, and we should not be granting commercial use withdrawal of water that exceeds the amount of water that doesn't impact neighboring water supplies. And
Right.
so it's a big issue that we hope that through work with the town of Poolesville, work with our county council members and state legislators, that we can really create a body of education and an ability to have a body that will safeguard and watch this. Because right now, some of the monitoring, I don't know if people knew, but the USGS monitoring stations, some of them have been ceased to be monitored. So we don't have some of the data that we would need.
And we used to have, I mean, it poured out of our ground, like the whole type of well where it came up and flowed out. We had 10 of those.
Yeah.
And we have maybe 2 that are actually trickling now.
Yeah, and we're getting reports of dried wells as well, so, and generally in the crystalline rock area, so, yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you.
you're welcome. And thanks for coming tonight and for being a good neighbor. We appreciate you. Others that I haven't seen raise their hands, anybody else have questions? Yes, come on up.
Hi, all. Matt Cook, 17938 Bliss Drive. Just looking at the capacity report 2024, I think that got it up to 627,000 in the permit 650. Is there a buffer that you're thinking that we're going to be maintaining so we don't naturally run up to that? Because like a COVID or another event like that, water main break, you could walk into a permit violation if we're moving that up.
Yeah, I let town staff.
Yeah, and it would take a long term to violate the permit, but the planning commission is going to be taking this up. They're going to take in the information we've had tonight, and with other information we've looked, excuse me, we've looked at, and they're going to develop recommendations for the commissioners. Wow.
So Matt, that's.
Sweating over here.
Oh, it's warm out here.
You guys, Matt asked a good question, and Wade, once you can speak again, or Niles, if they're available, if you can, just elaborate a little bit more about the process, that the information that we've taken in tonight, what happens with it?
So, yeah, so as we talked about at the May Planning Commission meeting, we're going to sort of follow up more on these specific questions of how the capacity plan reaches into it, what our historical data has shown, and what sort of is coming forward. So we had a preliminary discussion about that at the last meeting, but really it will be the next meeting where we'll get into the details of that.
And reserve capacity was
Yep.
one of the issues we're looking at.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming at the current time frame, there is no current ideas of new business, like restaurants or high capacity usage of water based upon our growth models? That's all I had.
You're going to start a business? Let us know.
Restaurant?
Yeah, restaurant.
Seafood.
Yeah, seafood. It's already suggestions.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Yeah, come on. Yes, you got it. You can say it from there.
Yeah, but I just saw, technically, we're in a severe drought right now. So, and that's April.
Well, it is an agricultural drought. I just started looking at it. Yes,
Yes,
we're
so
in a
that-
drought, it's whether or not it affects the water supply, because that could be a different kind of drought, hydrologic drought. And I'm not sure we're in that yet. I'm trying to check that out.
Yeah, I just got a map.
No, I probably think that.
Is it, who determines, is it MDE that
Kathy's
then
got some.
declares?
Maryland
Yeah.
drought monitoring under
It's a,
No, okay, so there's different opinions. Okay.
it's a U.S. drought monitor. You can find it online.
Mhm.
It's just, I forget what agency it is, but it's a federal agency that does it. It's probably related to NOAA. What was the question?
Which has now been defunded.
Well, that's okay. Kathy, you wanted to add something? I think we're okay, Pat.
Yeah, I didn't mention this, but on our last slide, we had some recommendations moving forward. And one of the things was to install some data loggers in some wells around town.
Yes.
So that we could do our own drought monitoring.
And that's a recommendation from both of you on that, right? We've got to obviously collect data loggers, et cetera.
So we can do this in the town, drought monitoring, long-term, 24/7, what are the water levels in a number of wells so that we know what, we didn't get much rain over this past winter, it was very dry, that was
Yeah.
unusual, and that
Okay.
was a concern.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but you need a data logger in a non-pumping well that's outside of the influence of the town's well.
Understood. Yeah, that's right. That's the best data, or the data.
Comparison.
So, in the back, we've got, so there's three ladies right there in the back row. You've been having great note-taking and good conversations. Is there something that we can do to help you be more?
Question.
I'm
He's pointing at you, Nikki.
Share with the group, like the teachers.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's good. We want to do that too. If you have questions or people have asked them already, we appreciate, the conversation going on, period. This is a time when we've got two great scientists in our midst, giving us a good conversation. Does anybody else have any questions? Commissioners, any further conversations?
Just digesting everything.
Yeah.
Got it, literally, got it.
Yeah.
This side?
a lot.
Anybody else in the audience? No? Alls I can do is say thanks. And there's been some expertise paid for by MCA that we have been able to benefit from, and we much appreciate it. Of course, we've got SS Papadopoulos and Kathy Mim, long-term observer in it. Kier's in the audience too. I know he pays attention to what we've got going on as well. Much appreciated there. And unless there's any other questions, I'm going to call this part of this conversation over with for tonight. And we appreciate everything you've done. And we'll take a 1-minute recess before we finish up our meeting tonight.
Thank you.
Maybe
Perfect.
5 minutes.
Yes, I do. Yes, I did. I have both of them.
It's because he's got to
Yeah.
run the meeting. I mean, really, we just have
Get
town
some jelly beans
managers.
from you then.
Really, we just have town managers.
Yeah, we could get it back before we say
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
What, I think this is going to be a record one.
Yeah. I think so.
That's what I expected.
All right.
Do you have much of a manager's report?
We have like 4 things.
We have to do is my report.
But don't everybody leave at once, right?
Yeah. All right, you guys, let's get it going again.
Yeah, hit that gap.
By you guys, I mean Sarah.
I'm ringing the bell too. I'm running out of things to make noise with.
Bernie, you don't have to go.
Thanks again, Tom.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Bernie. Thanks, Kathy.
This is where it
Thanks,
gets
guys.
fun. Where'd everybody go?
This is the fun part.
Now the temperature's fine.
See you guys. Yeah. Not in time. Not in time for me to get to CVS, unfortunately. Why?
Uh-oh.
I gotta pick up my son.
Okay, yeah. That's it then. It's up to town staff after this.
How long is your
Okay, everybody, thank you very much. We're back in session. We never really left to begin with. Great discussion. More discussion to come on that, but thanks to everybody for just their contributions tonight. Old business, nothing on the agenda. New business besides what we just did, nothing on the agenda. Town manager's report.
Sure, real quick, a couple things. Westwood, our sidewalk was almost completed, or the sidewalk is done, but they still have to do the pavement and the fence that goes along with it at the old house there. So hopefully this week that'll be finished. Hydrant flushing almost done, was talked about. Wayland Electrical bid is going to be on Wednesday, so the next meeting, we might see that before you to award a contract for that. We talked about Chuck Stompin and Planning Commission opening, it's been advertised. And then we already.
Did you reach out to the folks who had previously applied that weren't selected?
We typically don't, we just put out a new and let
Yeah.
people at a
Okay.
time.
Make sure it's fully broadcasted. That's,
Yep.
that's their call.
It will be sent out again, but we've already had 2 applicants come in, so we'll get more over time.
People are noticing it.
Yep.
Awesome.
And then, Well 2 is officially back online, as I said earlier, and we are working through MDE right now. They're reviewing the plans for the enclosures, so they can run all through the winter also. So that's good news
That's
that
worse.
it's online, so that's all I have.
That's it?
okay.
Nothing else?
Nope.
Questions for town staff? Motion?
Motion that we adjourn?
Second.
Second from Brian. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? We are adjourned. Good meeting, everybody. Thank you for, thank you